More LCS players are getting benched this week. We definitely have to get into the update of that on all the information we do have on that stuff. There's been some discussion for the last month or so on if the LCS should switch to BO2s. So I don't know about best of twos. We'll have to get into that. But this week's topic, we're going to go mainly on what each LCS team's main problem is. So we're going to go with a what's the problem kind of thing. Blue Jay and JNT 250, episode 46 of the Clown Fiesta podcast starts now. Let's get underway with the bench stuff. I guess every week we're going to bench another LCS player. This week it happened to be Saligo and partially Insanity. Pretty was just put in for one game, and then Insanity was right back in. I don't know if I would classify it as a benching, but we are seeing moves on the regular, eh, JNT?
Yeah. The Saligo one was most puzzling. Actually, I don't even know if that's true because the whole Immortals situation, basically to throw in your academy mid laner for only one game, feels like just a weird situation because it's hard to really justify like just getting a chance to play one game and even setting the precedent that like you're only going to be playing one game no matter the results, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But to go back to the Saligo thing, I think you and I both agreed that Dignitas's biggest, thing that made them successful in week one was Saligo and the impact that he was able to make on the game. Obviously, had a really good carry performance on the Akali, and then in the game that Dardoch really hard carried on the Rumble Jungle, it was all Saligo in the early game, pushing and shoving mid, went top lane for 2 dives, which basically got the snowball rolling for them. So weird moves. They seem to be happening week in and week out, and we'll just have to see who's on the bench next week.
Yeah, so like you said, they're all kind of puzzling, and that's the thing. Like literally every single one, whether it be Alphari, Sven, or Saligo, or literally every single benching to me has all been something that I'm really puzzled about, no matter what. When it comes to the Saligo one, that's the more recent one. I thought he looked so good last week. I literally gave him my Popoff award because he actually looked great and had such a solid influence on the games, on their wins specifically. And so I didn't think Yusui would go in. I thought Yusui looked fine, but I'm really puzzled as to why they pulled out Saligo. But this isn't very different from what we saw last year. You remember they had put in Lorlo in the top lane, and we thought he looked good for the couple of weeks that he was in, and then they took him right back out and put Viper right back in. So this isn't anything new out of Dignitas. Yeah, I don't know. This whole thing is really strange to me, and I just don't agree with any of the moves, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't. Specifically talking about the Dignitas and Immortals ones, definitely don't agree with them. I think the King, Sven, and the Alphari Jenkins situations are a little bit different. Team Liquid actually released a statement about the whole substitution. I'm going to read it out now if that's cool with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go for it.
So Team Liquid put this out on, I believe this was Friday afternoon, right before the games happened. But it said Jenkins will be playing for week 2 of the LCS Summer Split, and while Alphari is on break until June 27th, they both have the full support of the team and coaching staff. There's been a lot of questions, so we wanted to shed a little light on the situation. Last week, Alphari was benched for performance and attitude issues, which were concerns that started during practice leading to the Summer Split. Alphari has given us permission to share that these issues revolve around private reasons involving his personal life. In the right mindset, we believe Alphari is one of the best in his role. In hindsight, before competing last week, we should have come to a decision for Alphari to take some time off. After our first game, we were not clear on our communication to Alphari and in our announcement. Since then, we've been working with the team, staff, and Alphari on a plan moving forward. Alphari will be taking a break until June 27th, which I believe is after week 4, during which time we will provide our full support for what he's going through personally and to get his motivation back to what it was. We hope after this time, Barney will be ready to return to his spring form and compete.
Yeah, so I guess the ones where there's like clearly some stuff that's going on in the background with Sven and Alphari, it sounds like those ones. It's more understanding because there's clearly some information that we don't know. What I'm surprised with this one though about with the new update for Alphari is that like if there is some personal issues that he's having, it's strange to me that they could put a date on exactly when he'll come back because for me like who knows who's to say that those issues will for sure be resolved by X time. I'm a little bit puzzled by that. I feel like you can't just, oh, everything's going to be fine by this day, you're back in. That seems a little off to me. But I do completely understand that, look, sometimes there's some things that come up and there's some things that you don't want shared with the public. And I think Alfari and Team Liquid came to an agreement together of just how much they wanted to share. And I think it's totally understandable, knowing that there's some motivation issues and things of that nature going on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think this announcement came with a lot of great reception because it has sort of been multiple occasions on the Team Liquid end with them not really outlining themselves fully. And then now, almost a week and a half later into the whole situation, they finally put out this statement. It does sort of feel like an issue that we've had in the past with transparency from orgs. I know a couple people, they did sort of refer to the Meteos benching way back in the day. His first, funny, his first time being benched on 100 Thieves when it came out of the blue, came out of nowhere. There was no reasoning behind it. It was just it was announced, and it felt very weird. And that sort of felt to me, this was the same sort of situation. Alfari is benched pretty randomly, and to be honest, this one's even worse because he was one of the best players in the league. Obviously, there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't know, and it seemed that Team Liquid either didn't want to share those at the time or have now chosen to do so, share part of it due to the whole community backlash.
And that's the balance that you have to weigh, right? Is how much do you want to let people know, because you don't want to let people know about things that are personal to that player, but you don't want to be like 100 Thieves where like the fans are wondering what the hell is going on and you're saying nothing, right? So it's a really difficult thing to balance, and like I do have to empathize with that. One thing that I'm not too much of a fan of is the way that Dignitas made their announcement, because to me it just sounds like total bullshit. So they had Fifth Laren come out, and I don't know if he's like head of esports or GM. I don't remember his exact title, but
I think it was
he's like head of
Global
esports or
Director of
something
Esports.
for Dignitas. And the part that got me is when he said this should enable both players to accelerate their growth. Like, come on, cut the crap, man. You're not enabling someone's growth by putting them back in academy. Like, to me, I don't know. I would need a good explanation as to how that is happening for me to really buy into that. And so for that, I was like, I don't know. That sounds like a weird PR thing to say. And so it's like, whatever. You got to be PR. You got to do PR, whatever. So that's fine. I don't believe it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the thing for me, specifically with the Dignitas substitution, is the way that they made it sound was like this is going to be some sort of long-term thing. The way that they outlined it, as you mentioned, basically saying like that they believe, they being the coaching staff and the organization, believe it's in the best interest of all parties if this change happens, Yasui coming up to the LCS squad and Saligo going down to Academy. So what I really dislike is if Dignitas were to just put Saligo back in maybe next week or the week after due to maybe Yasui's performances during the games or performances during scrims, because I think when you make a big move like this, especially early on into the season, you really have to back yourselves in that, hey, we're going to make this move and we're kind of going to die with this move. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of people liked when the whole Demonte Ryoma situation was going on in the spring split, but I was actually I was kind of on the side of keeping Ryoma in as long as possible because it was clear that Demonte didn't fit with the meta. Ryoma had the better chance of performing on control mages, and they decided to stick with it the whole split, which I give them full respect for because I think that was the right move to do. Whereas if I look at this Dignitas situation, I think it's going to be a real shit show if 2-3 weeks into the season, Dignitas, let's say, has a they have a sub 500 record after 3 weeks of the summer split, and they're like, okay, we made a mistake. Yasui's not the answer. We're going to put Saligo back in. Well, then it just makes your whole coaching staff, your whole organization look like a bunch of dumbasses, and Saligo's obviously going to be pissed and not happy with you that this decision was made.
Saligo doesn't strike me as like, I mean, I don't know Saligo obviously, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy to get pissed. But
I mean,
I
yeah,
still
but
completely agree with you that like it's like, oh, like come on, man. Like it's definitely not a good feeling regardless.
it's clear he's a solid player, and I don't think it would help Dignitas' chances to retain him going into 2022.
Yeah. No, I agree. The other thing that I want to get into was this came out on Reddit. I think this was today. With Solo's take on the whole Alfari benching thing. Let me just read this out. So this was on Alfari, and this is Golden Guardian Solo saying, I feel like if the coaching staff can't handle a player to the point where they're getting benched, especially someone as talented as Alfari, that is more of a failure on the coaching staff than it is the player. So just to be clear, this is just a Reddit quote. This was not. I didn't read the full thing. I just want to be clear on that. But that idea, just that idea right there, just seems a little off to me. Like so what I get from this, maybe I'm not completely understanding it, but what I get from this is like, so anytime a player acts out, it's the coach's fault. Like, huh? Like, am I misunderstanding this?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say about that is I'm not going to say it's obvious because it's not obvious because we don't know, but we can assume that there was probably some troubles with Alfari and the coaching staff. And to make a bit of a hypothetical situation here, we don't exactly know if it's Alfari directly flaming somebody or directly disagreeing with the way that things are being run on Team Liquid, or it's him, wanting to do things in a different way or questioning, how things are being done, whether that's like practice scrims, the way that the games are being played or whatever, because I think there's a huge difference. If Alfari is like obviously directly flaming and being a detriment to the team, that's 100% on Alfari because he's, harming the team on his own. But if it's more of a situation where like Alfari is questioning certain things or wanting to play the game a different way or wanting changes to be made, I think that quote could be partially correct because it's the coaching staff's job to get the best out of your players and to best implement all your players into a team. So while I think that quote is like, I would say that quote is maybe like 33% right. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think it's a quote you can just directly say, and it's a say all for every situation, because I think every situation is going to be completely different. And yeah, it maybe at 33% of the time it'll deal with that situation.
And sometimes context is important as well.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, I didn't really have time to get to it because I've been doing a bunch of other stuff today. But yeah, maybe there's some context to it, and I'll have to go back and look at it later. And if it does make more sense, I'll probably bring it up next week. Anything else on the benching stuff?
What's our
Pretty didn't look all too great.
Yeah, I guess we'll just like touch on that real quick. I said this just quickly earlier, but it really doesn't make any sense to me why you would sub your academy mid laner in for only one game as a quote unquote reward for playing well in their academy games. First of all, it's 3 games into the season, and while yes, Immortals did look very great in week 1, I don't think that's necessarily like okay, things are now going well, so let's try something new. The first week of any season, whether it's League of Legends, whether it's traditional sports, the first week is always the most volatile week where upsets happen and the league is at its most volatile state. So I don't think you should be making decisions based on week 1 results. And what we saw, Pretty just didn't look very good. He played one game, he got caught out like 4 times in the sideline in their game against EG, and honestly was probably the reason they lost that game. And I don't think Insanity would make those kinds of mistakes based off of what we've seen and the improvements that he's made from summer 2020 into spring 2021 and even the first 3 games of summer. But if they're going to go with the argument that Insanity wasn't their strongest player in week 1 and Pretty has been smurfing it in Academy, I mean, I can somewhat understand that. But if that's the case, I would rather them do like a commitment move to say, hey, we think Pretty's better than Insanity. We're going to play Pretty. But like subbing him in for one game just does nothing. You've now just thrown away a game, basically.
Yeah, I'm confused about the one game as well. If you think he's LCS ready and you think he's your better player, he should be playing. I think it's pretty much that simple. If you don't, why are you just giving him one random game? Like, I get you're trying to reward him, but you're really punishing your other starter. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Is you're taking one game away from your boy in the mid lane. That's how I look at it, and so it is a little puzzling to me. I don't think it makes much sense either. Yeah, I just don't agree with it. It makes not a lot of sense.
Just the last thing on this, the video they also put out on Twitter was just super fucking weird, by the way. Like, they were like memeing the thing at the start with the like, do you like Chipotle or Chick-fil-A better? And then they just had Insanity and Pretty sit next to Gyotto for like a minute and a half, said absolutely nothing, and just sat there awkwardly while Gyotto was like trying to explain the thought process of their move. It was just super weird. And I was like, oh, why are these guys sitting here? Get on with this fucking video. It was like a 3.5 minute video.
So here's the thing. I don't mind it because they never, like, Immortals never makes any fucking content ever. Like, their content that they do make is absolute garbage and they make very, very little of it. So there's that. And I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe it's not the most well done because the quality was pretty crap. It just felt like they recorded it on someone's phone in the car or whatever. But I was like, okay, they're trying to play the meme game and they're trying to meme. You're like, okay, you get a couple of points for trying to be Cloud9 or Team Liquid, or I guess TSM lately has
I was
been
gonna
been
say,
pretty good
like,
with it.
I feel like TSM was like 3 days late on that.
Yeah, that's the other thing with the TSM one as well. I didn't like the TSM one, not because I didn't think it was good, but because it felt like it was really late. Because they waited all the way for TSM Legends to come out, and it's like by that time, like the meme is kind of a little too dank at that point.
And then Parth put
But
out that really bait tweet the day before, like,
yeah,
there's gonna be some changes, or well, it wasn't that. It was like, expect an announcement tomorrow. Don't believe all these rumors that you're hearing, or some shit like that. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is obviously gonna be a troll of some sort.
I don't mind the memeing though. I think the effort is there. I just think the delivery's a little bit late and a little bit lackluster. But yeah, I like that these teams are trying to meme and try to be entertaining in some way, shape, or form. So I can at least appreciate that. The last thing I'll say on the benchings is just I feel so bad for Pretty. My God, that is the absolute worst case scenario. Now,
Yeah, he looked
you have
pretty
LC,
awful.
you have LCS experience. Oh, how'd it go? I fed my ass off and kind of lost us the game, and like has no chance to redeem himself whatsoever because he just got one game. Yeah, that's my last thoughts on that one. So feels kind of bad.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, let's move on to our "What's the Problem" segment. So this week, like I said earlier, we want to touch on every team, but we tried to go with a different theme this week that we haven't done before, and it's just trying to identify what we think each team's biggest problem or problems are if they have them. So J&T, I'll let you start us off. Where are we going first?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to start from the bottom or the top?
Up to you.
I say we start at the bottom this week, and I'm gonna go
Okay.
by current LCS standings, the combined record in that. So we're going Golden Guardians first.
Okay, go for it.
I'm going. Okay. I think there's obviously a lot of problems with Golden Guardians. They're at the bottom of the standings for a reason. And to be honest, I don't think there's a ton of value in just picking apart their team fighting, decision making, what have you, because they're already at deficits to begin with. Because I think the biggest problem with this team is just their individual players don't stack up to the rest of the league. I think the only person that is really at like a decent LCS level right now is Solo, and I would put maybe a Blaze Olive like close second right behind him. I think Solo, from what we've seen so far, he's obviously a massive upgrade over Niles. He's a
Yeah.
competent laner who gets pressure in lane, who can get leads in lane. Even in losses, I think you look at the Golden Guardians game against TSM when he's playing the Nocturne into Huni's Viego. I thought he played really, really insane that game. Obviously, their team didn't take home the W because I think a Blaze Olive, he couldn't really get a lot done in that game on the Lucian mid. But if you look at the rest of this team, I think Iconic is by far the worst jungler in the league. When I was looking at all the LCS junglers, I would actually argue that he is dead last by a large margin. And I think when you take a look at the rest of the jungle landscape, a lot of the other what you could call bottom tier junglers in the LCS, I wouldn't even consider them bottom tier because I think they're like role players in each of their teams. Like Broxa, yeah, he's on CLG. CLG's really bad, but like Broxa is CLG's best player by far. You have
Yeah.
Dardoch on Dignitas, who's a key role player. Xerxes is one of the best players on Immortals. Closer on 100 Thieves. Sven Skaren on EG. Yeah, he's not the old Sven Skaren, but he's still solid. But if you just look at Iconic, I think he's by far and away the worst jungler in the league. Is really AFK in the early game, doesn't get a lot done. And when you have laners who are often playing from behind, it doesn't help when you have zero jungle pressure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually do agree with you that he is probably the worst jungler in the league. To me, I don't know if I would say by a long shot, but I guess I would agree that he's probably at the bottom. For me, I think the problem with this team is that I think their bot lane still absolutely sucks. If I have to be blunt, they are always, always, always leaving laning phase behind, and therefore they can never have any impact on the game later on. The other thing that I noticed with this team is that when they do somehow find a way to get an advantage, you just know it's going to be thrown. Their macro game in the late game is really, really bad. They always panic and throw somehow at Dragon or at Baron when they do get a lead, and that's pretty rare in itself already. So when I look at this team, that's the main problems that I see. I think that yeah, their bot lane's bad, and even when they do get leads anyways, they're just throwing them. You can anticipate that they're going to throw the lead that they do get, and I think that's one of their biggest problems, which isn't too uncommon, honestly. When we're looking at newer players, I think that that's something that's very, very common, in all honesty. Um, Chime looked really, really bad this weekend, though. I still don't know if I want to lay a lot of the blame at the feet of Stixay, because I don't think he's played with a very good support at all this year. But regardless, the bot lane is struggling, and they're pretty much struggling in almost every lane. I do agree with you that solos look pretty good, though.
Yeah, in terms of the bot lane, what I'll say is that Chime's inexperience really does show in terms of how he picks his engagements, and obviously his laning phase is pretty atrocious. It's really hard to give, it's hard to give Stixay like a good, it's hard to get a read on him because he has played with Newbie, who I would argue was the worst support in Spring Split by a large margin. I would again also argue, I said this before, he was up there with Niles in terms of worst players in the LCS. And as we just mentioned, Chime doesn't look a whole lot better. And I think Solo and Ablaze Olive are their two best players, and Solo is super solid, and Ablaze Olive's like pretty average. And so for the most part, this team quite often, as you mentioned, like they don't get a lot of leads, and when they get them, they're often thrown in. I really wonder if that has to do with just their inexperience of playing with the lead because they're behind so often. Like obviously, we all can see on these LCS games they're losing a lot, but I even wonder in scrims like what their win rate in scrims is like, and then how that transitions to practice in terms of playing with the lead. Because similar to if you're one of the best teams in the league, you're winning all the time and you get behind, you might not know how to play from behind, but it's kind of the reverse for the teams at the bottom. When you get ahead, you might not necessarily know how to play from ahead because you're often not ahead.
Yeah, and the last thing that I'll say about this team is even though things look very, very bad, they are not the only ones in that boat. And I actually think it's still early to say, but because this iteration of Golden Guardians, we've only seen 6 games, like subbing in 2 players makes a significant difference, in my opinion. I'm still not ready to say that this team is like absolute dog shit tier like they were last split. Like I think they were hands down the worst team without a doubt last split. But I think that you do have 2 new players. One is for sure an upgrade we've seen. Like we already kind of know what we're getting with Solo over Niles. And maybe Chime is a little bit better than Newbie. Who knows? He hasn't looked so great so far. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm still not 100% sure that this is the worst team in the league, because I think FlyQuest and CLG have both looked pretty bad as well. And so I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that this is for sure the worst team yet, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Or
Yeah,
how the summer split goes.
exactly. It's hard to judge because I think from the outset, all people are going to see is the records because obviously your spring split record does carry over. But I definitely agree with you. Like
They've picked up 2 wins already
like,
this split.
yeah,
They're on pace for 9 wins in the summer split.
yeah, like should we get to the end of the summer split? Yeah, they might still be in 9th to 10th place, but they still could have a better record than these other teams in this 27 game season of summer split. So I think they have potential to be not the worst team, but I think it's probably most likely they'll be the worst team. But I have hope for them.
Yeah. Let's move on to CLG, another team that, oh my god, have they struggled as well. And it's been a little bit more painful, I think, with CLG because I think people expect a little bit more out of them. I'll
Yeah.
start with this one since you started with the last one. I think their solo laners are really struggling right now.
Yep.
I would have said maybe last split or maybe last year, I would have said that Pobelter was their best player. I actually think right now he is their worst player. I think that he is very, very careless about his positioning. And I think that really, really showed in the Cloud9 game specifically. The amount of times that he's ulting in on Zoe or just walking straight into Perks, like as if Perks isn't already fed. Like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. J&T, how mad was I getting watching CLG this weekend? On a scale of
Yeah.
1 to 10, how mad was I?
Or like a solid at least 6, probably maybe a 7.
Yeah.
Like you were getting a bit heated.
Yeah, that was more so in the TSM game because I didn't think TSM was playing particularly well. And
Both of
as
them,
I've said
all of the above. Whenever we're
as
watching
I've s-
CLG.
yeah, as I've said many times, I'm continuing to try to hold on to being a CLG fan just until the end of the year, and I don't know if I can make it, man. It's hard to watch this team. Like, holy, I think Brox has been great. As long as you get him on Lee Sin and get him on something that he actually looks good on. Stop trolling, putting him on Lilia. That's a waste of time. That champion sucks.
That champion's so bad. I never want to see that champion picked ever in pro play in my solo queue game. Somebody picked Lilia in my solo queue game today, and I just knew it was doomed. I just knew.
But but back to our main topic around what the problem is. I think that Pobelter and Finn have looked just very, very careless, and it's really surprising. Like even Finn got a lead. What game was it that he got a lead and just tried basing in the river brush, like a really lazy place to base, and he ends up getting caught and just throwing away his lead. I think it was to a Renekton. I don't remember who it was against. Was it Golden Guardians?
Don't
It doesn't
remember.
matter. It's just a really lazy play, and it's just careless, and it's like, how does this keep happening? These kinds of things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's not too much that I have on CLG other than their solo laners because it's not even like their laning phase is bad, so they're coming out of lane phase behind. It's that their lane phase is bad, but also their positioning and decision making in the late game team fightings is really bad as well. Because I think for the most part, if you were to just like isolate Broxa, Turtle, and Smoothie, I think all three of those guys have actually played pretty well for the most part. I would put Broxa as maybe like a middle of the pack jungler this split, and I would put Turtle and Smoothie as like a solid, but like I'd put them at solid in terms of bot lane. Like it's not a bot lane that's going to completely int away the game, not necessarily one that's going to completely carry the game, but I think that so far through 6 games they've been solid. But both
I
their
put them
solo
below
laners,
average is how I would describe them
yeah,
for bot lane. I would
maybe
say
like
below average.
I put them as about 6 or 7, and I think as CLG you'd take that. But their solo lanes have been really, really terrible. I think, as you mentioned, Pobelter is on the hard decline right now.
Yeah, and it's so sad to say. Like, I love Pobelter. Like, Pobelter was actually the reason I started becoming a FlyQuest fan when he was on the team a couple years ago. Like, that was why I was like, yes, I want to cheer for this team. I'm a huge Pobelter guy, and just to see his decline is really, really sad. Honestly, it's unfortunate when you got to see your best players just your favorite players just in the hard decline.
Yeah, I just don't think he's comfortable in this current mid lane meta. That's what it really seems to me. I don't think he feels comfortable at all playing the Renekton. What else did he play?
Zoe,
He played like
remember
3 Renekton
Zoe? And
games. He
he
had a
got
Zoe
wrecked
game.
by Perks on when he was
Yeah,
playing Zoe. Like Tristana, Perks Tristana was
yeah.
shitting
He
all
he,
over
he
him.
played he played another game of like a non-control mage mid laner, but I don't.
Syndra? I thought no, I thought he played
He
Syndra
played
though.
it might have been in week 1, but my point is that
Okay,
Pobelter doesn't look comfortable on the current champion
no,
pool.
not at all. And the thing is, like him and Finn are players that I don't think we should expect them to be at the bottom of the league in their I don't
Yeah,
know in their
I was
performance or whatever.
super high on Finn going into the summer split because I thought he had a really great, back half of spring, and I thought he was
Me
going to be
too.
like a solid, consistent player that Broxa could play through in the top lane. But it's literally the exact opposite. He's having the same start to spring or start to summer that he did to spring, where he's kind of inting games.
Yeah, and I don't want to give up hope on those guys yet because we've seen both of these players perform at a higher level before, but it is really heartbreaking to see a team like CLG just needs something to go their way, and my God, is it hard to watch.
Yeah,
It's really, really frustrating.
I watched the Broxa interview earlier on that he
Oh,
did with Travis. Man, he was like
right in the
heartbroken.
feels,
It
right
was
in the feels.
Dude, it was hard to watch. Like those first 2 minutes, you could see like he was destroyed after that game because he knew like super winnable game. Taking down C9 is like the confidence that they needed after having such a shite start to the season, and then they just kind of threw that game. To be honest, like
They're sitting at like 6-18. They're
that's
winning a
rough.
quarter of their games.
Like that is rough.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a team full of veterans. Like these are guys that have played the game a long time, a long time.
Yeah, I mean it's not
Um,
like Golden Guardians who at the start was a 4 rookie team pretty much plus Stixay. Like this is a full veteran team of guys who've been playing pro league for at least like 3 years. I think as Finn had only been playing for like 3 years at the time, and that was like their youngest player per se.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on CLG is I think their drafting sucks as well. Like I mentioned, I really hated the Lily. I don't know why anybody's picking that, but enough of that for now. The other thing is they picked Kaisa last week and had no CC for her to follow up. Barely any CC, let's say. They had very little. They had like Leona only. Don't get me wrong, Leona has plenty of CC, but you need more than that if you're going to draft a Kaisa. And so their draft just makes no fucking sense.
All right.
There.
We got it out of our system.
I think I got yeah. I think I got the CLG flame out of the way. Our weekly CLG flame. Let's talk about FlyQuest now.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt like we kind of talked about this last week. We were surprised when they had a 2-1 because it didn't feel like they had a 2-1. And then coming to this week, they went 1-2, right?
I believe so. They beat TSM and they got perfect gamed by Cloud9 and they lost to Golden Guardians.
Yeah. But it was, I don't know, I kind of got the same vibe as I did in week 1 to week 2. Like, this team is just super hot and cold. Like, they have potential to be a somewhat decent team, but they're just like, we just get these games from them when their players are just like absolutely running it down. Like, Licorice ran it down against Cloud9, ran it down against Golden Guardians.
Fudge shit on him with the Jace
oh,
and
man.
Lee Sin. Wow. Yeah, that was an absolute stomp. I mean, when you get a perfect game, that's usually because everyone got stomped pretty much.
Yeah.
For the most part. So I guess my problem, or the way I look at this team with what their problem is their good players aren't good very often.
Yeah.
Licorice is supposed to be a good player. And like you said, this team's very hot and cold. I would argue, obviously, far more cold if you only have 9 wins and what is it, 9 wins, 15 losses or something. So obviously you're way more cold than you are hot. I don't know if I did my math wrong there, but they're around that. They're like 8 or 9 wins or something. And so I expect Licorice to perform well far more often than he is, because there are performances where Licorice goes out there and he shits on someone. Like, and then I think it was last week that I was like, hey, we got to remember, like, Licorice was one of our top laners for a couple of years, and it just feels like he fell right off a cliff. I don't know what happened. And same thing with Johnson. Johnson was great last year. You and I gave him so much credit, and he's having very little impact for FlyQuest this year. Although I will say that their Kog'Maw game was pretty good. They shit all over TSM's bot lane.
Yeah, and he had a solid Ezreal game.
We're not seeing enough of it, right?
Exactly.
We're not seeing enough of it.
Yeah.
So that's my problem. Is their good players aren't good often enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what I had. Licorice and Johnson are both really hot and cold. The other thing that I think is starting to become a problem for FlyQuest is I think they've sort of lost their identity that they originally had early on in the spring lock-in tournament and early on in the spring split, with Jose Diodo being this like carry type jungler. Because I think we saw a lot of that early on in the spring split and in the lock-in tournament with him playing stuff like the Graves, playing stuff like the Nidalee, and doing a ton of work in the early game and getting Licorice leads or getting Johnson and Diamond leads at the time. And I kind of felt like when the whole Hecarim Udyr meta basically took over the whole game, Jose Diodo really started to fall off, and we did see a pretty steep fall off from FlyQuest towards the end of spring split. And I kind of have that same feeling going into summer. Yes, while the jungle pool is completely different, and it's not just Hecarim Udyr, and you do have more agency on some of these champions, it doesn't feel like that's coming from Jose Diodo, though. He still feels like he's still in the same, like, more passive mode where it's very farm heavy, because it still is. But you do have these kinds of junglers like the Xin Zhao and like the Rumble who can make a really strong early game impact, and I'm just not feeling that from him.
Yeah, I actually that's the other thing too is Jose Diodo and Palafox have both felt to me very AFK, like not making much happen. It feels like this team is also very reactionary. Even like even in their win against TSM was the one trying to make a proactive play, and they just got turned on by a TP from FlyQuest. TSM was the one that started off the play, and it's like, well, if TSM isn't trying to make a play and they don't screw up, like, I don't know, PoE didn't TP. Like, if TSM doesn't screw up there, do you even get an advantage in that game, and do you even end up winning it? I don't know, right? Who's to say?
Yeah.
But to me, like, that was more of a mistake from TSM than it was FlyQuest being proactive and making a good play. And so I think that you need to see FlyQuest push other teams to react to them, and it doesn't happen very often. And God, is it ever talked about so often that you need to be proactive? That's such a key word that's touched on so often, and it's memed even a little bit, but for good reason, because you do need to play proactive. I've said this 1,000 times. The right way to play the game is for you to be the one to act first and put the other team in a situation that they have to react, and they don't do that often enough at all.
Yeah, I would agree.
Immortals. I'll let you start with Immortal. Do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Well, my thoughts on Immortals are still exactly the same as my thoughts were at the end of last week, and it was the topic that I was trying to get on Hotline League with, is their players are just super inconsistent in terms of individual performances. We saw in week 1 when their players are on at the same time, they're a really strong team and they're actually solid. But
Mm-hmm.
week 2, we saw the Immortals of Spring Split where Revenge has a really fucking terrible game and is completely hopeless in the top lane. Or we see Raze absolutely run it down against Dignitas. Obviously, I think actually I want to give some credit to Dignitas in that game because I think the Samira pick from Neo was really, really good to punish the early Varus pick from Immortals. But this week we saw an Immortals player is going to run it down. And if that happens, they basically have no chance because they're basically playing 4v5 the whole game.
So my diagnosis, if you will, is actually very similar. The first thing I have on my notes here is that Revenge is too unreliable depending on what champion he's on. His set looks so good. His Viego looks fucking useless.
Yeah,
And
he's
it's
like
like, how
no
can you
impact
look
on
so
that
good on
champion.
one champion and so bad on another? And so I think that that stuff that comes with being a newer player in the league, I don't like. It's not like I think he'll be like this forever. I think he's still a rookie, and this to me is a reminder that he's still a rookie and that building his champion pool is something that takes a long time. And so overall, I think that Immortals should be very happy with what they're getting out of Revenge because when he's looking good, he's looking very, very good.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I don't think he's being consistent enough that this team's going to be able to perform well when it comes to playoff time, and that to me is a problem. So it's still a problem, although I would say it's a good problem to have when it comes from a rookie. Same thing with Race though. Like, I mean, that guy gets a lead in lane and then just runs it down the rest of the game. He's too unreliable to carry the game once you've given him resources. We saw him and Insanity with 3-0 leads. Who were they playing when they were both 3-0? Was it FlyQuest? Or no,
They're
it was
playing.
TL. It was
Yes,
TL, right?
Insanity was playing
And
Lucian. Raze was playing Tristana, Kaisa.
it felt like they were
I
too
remember.
afraid to push their lead. I think it was Tristana and Jinx.
Oh, is that it? I thought it was a Lucian.
It might have been Lucian. It was Lucian. It was Lucian and Jinx. Am
Okay,
I getting that
yeah,
right?
I think it was
It was
Lucian
two
Jinx.
fucking 80 carries. It was
Yeah,
280 carries. Yeah, they were both 3-0. And Immortals is too afraid to fight for dragons. It's like you should want to fight. You're ahead. Take these fights, smash them. Don't be afraid to fuck up because being afraid to fuck up is fucking up. You're too afraid to go to dragon fight it, but you're just giving TL soul. That's screwing up right there. So
yeah.
it was a little bit like damn, like I'm a little disappointed because I thought that they did have good early games and they've looked good for half of their games this split. They went 3-0 last week. It was just a little sad to see them not want to push their leads or maybe be too afraid to push their leads or just not be ready for objectives when they're up. Like you need to have someone on timers for that stuff and be to the objective ahead of time. Especially if you're ahead, you shouldn't be able to get in there and actually fight for position and fight for vision around objectives, and that's something that they didn't do. Last thing I'll say is I still think Xerxes looking good. People are saying like Xerxes looking way better than he did last split. You know, I thought he looked good last split. I thought he looked good, and he was on a bad team. I don't think he got enough credit last split, and I know that's something that you or that I've said to you many times, but I'm just
Hmm.
going to reiterate that. I think Xerxes is a good jungler, plain and
Yeah,
simple.
the only other thing I'll say on Immortals is the way that the week played out. It just made the whole pretty situation look even worse than it did. Because as we've mentioned, we think the
Yeah,
biggest problem with Immortals is one single player basically griefing the whole game. And unfortunately, Pretty was the player that griefed that whole game against EG, getting caught
yep,
out 4 times in the side lane as the Orianna, pushing up with no vision, no pressure around the map. And to be honest, that is just a straight up rookie mistake.
yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's a chance that they're 1-2 this weekend if Insanity played. Maybe that's a little too aggressive. Maybe well, I don't know. It's really you don't know because we couldn't see it. He didn't play the game, so it's too difficult to say. But we do know that Pretty really held them back that game. Let's say that, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that it's a rookie player. What can you say, right?
Mm. All right. Evil Genius is next up. I think we can sum this one up in one word.
See, I don't think I know what the word is. It's a name, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same, honestly. I got a little bit
Jizuke.
more, but go yeah, go ahead. It's Jizuke.
Jizuke.
Uh I thought he had some really nice carry performances and nothing else at all. Nothing else to touch on, of course. Of
We
course
we
I'm
won't
leaving.
we won't talk
Yeah.
about like his 5 other games or 4 other games.
Yeah, of course, Jizuke is this team lives and dies by Jizuke, and You know what I will say? I will say that this week was different than last week in the sense that there was a lot more good than there was bad in comparison. Last week it was just all bad, right? This week he had
Yes,
a couple of int plays that is still happening, but he hard carried their one. His Akali looked great.
it did.
Was that against TL as well?
Yep.
I think that was the TL game.
Mhm.
That game was a freaking fiesta. But
It
my
was.
God, he absolutely stomped him. And so you got to give props where it's due. I always say if you're going to flame Jizuke, well, you have to give him props when he's popping off, and he popped off in that game. So yeah.
However, his
Uh,
Jace against 100 Thieves wasn't as good.
yeah. No, he got stomped by Abadagi. We'll have to
He
talk about that when we
he
get to
got
100 Thieves.
absolutely shit on.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that when we get to 100 Thieves because I think that was a lot of Abadage looking really good. The other thing that I wanted to add with EG, because I don't think we could sum it up in one word, um, I don't think Svenskeren is a top tier jungler anymore, and I don't think it's close. You mentioned earlier how you think Svenskeren's still solid. I am not going there anymore. I don't think he's solid anymore. I don't know what happened, but he seems very AFK as well. Like there's not much happening out of Svenskeren. Maybe he's not
Unless he's
playing
playing
the Lee
Zinzao.
Sins. Maybe he's not playing the Lee Sin like he used to, and where he used to be like have such a solid influence on games back when he was playing Lee Sin. He used to be a really good Sejuani player as well. We haven't really seen Sejuani forever, but
That's a TSM
yeah,
special. None of that.
I, I don't think he makes as much happen nearly as much as he used to. And yeah, I think that that's one of the things that's holding back EG because I think Impact, even though he wasn't as good as last split, I think Impact has been okay. I think we know what we're getting out of Jizuke, and I think their bot lane has been okay as well. I think Ignar's looked pretty good, but he's playing with a rookie 80 carry, and so I think that their bot lane's going to struggle a little bit. But yeah, I don't think Svenskeren's been very good, and I think we've seen a pretty significant drop off from him as well.
Yeah, for Sven Skaren, I mean, when I'm talking about he's solid, it's mainly because I've already accepted the fact, as you just said, that he's fallen off pretty hard and is no longer the top tier jungler that he was when he made the move from Cloud9 to EG. I think he had a pretty solid first split on EG in spring when they finished third place, I believe, where they lost to FlyQuest and then it was the FlyQuest C9 finals at the
We're
end of
talking
that.
about last year, right?
Oh yeah,
2020?
I'm talking about 2020 spring split when
Okay.
EG finished third. I think he was pretty solid then,
Right.
but in
Yeah.
both summer and from what we've seen in 2021, I've kind of accepted the fact that he's no longer that Sven Skaren who won the MVP award and then kind of just got traded off of C9 for Blabber.
Yeah, EG Svenskeren has looked noticeably worse than Cloud9 Svenskeren and TSM Svenskeren.
Yeah,
I would
I
say.
would say TSM and Cloud9 Sven Skaren were top at the very least. He was basically at every single point, probably a top 3 jungler. And I would say minus the first split on EG, he's been a middle of the pack jungler, anywhere between
And
5 and 7 or something like that. And I think
and a
that's a
lot of
fair statement,
people
and that's how I'm seeing Sven Skaren moving forward.
and a lot of people will say, well, you know, he had better laners back then, and it's easier to look at when you have better laners, but he's still got pretty good laners now. I could argue, yes, I could get behind the bot lane being a little bit weak right now because he had Deathly who wasn't so great, and he had Bang who looked awful. So I don't mind people that say, well, his bot lane's a lot weaker, but Jizuke is usually gets a lot of leads in lane, honestly. And same with Impact. Impact is not like Impact is a good laner. And so I don't think that you could just blame his laners for his poor performance. I think that he just has declined as a player. I don't think that means he can't find it again, but right now he is a bottom half. And no doubt in my mind is he a bottom half jungler right now, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, the only other thing I had on EG was similar to Chime's inexperience. Danny's inexperience is pretty obvious, and I think it's as expected for me because this guy made the jump from amateur to LCS. He only just started on EG Prodigies at the start of 2021. Now completely similar to Poom, kind of like jumped the gun and went all the way up to LCS. And while I don't think he's looked as bad as Poom did when that guy debuted in the LCS, I don't think Danny's been that great. He's had some decent performances, but it's clear that his late game team fighting it needs some work because he's getting caught out quite a lot, going a little bit too aggressive on some plays, and I think
His arcane shifts,
yeah.
his real ease have been a little bit aggro and a little bit misguided, let's say.
But what I will say is it's clear that he's like good at the role. He's just,
You know,
as we've mentioned, making some rookie mistakes, and if you eliminate those, I think he can be a solid player. I think, minus the egregious mistakes, I would say so far he's an upgrade over Deftly.
well, and some other things that some players have pointed out. I don't remember who I heard. Someone said it in an interview or something. Um, I didn't actually see because I don't. We didn't like if unless you're watching Pro View and you can watch the whole lane. Like you can't always notice everything that goes on in the lane. But someone was saying that they think that his laning phase is really weak. Who do you remember who said that?
I don't know.
Was it King? Was it who said that?
I have no clue.
Someone said it in a post game interview. So by the sounds of things, people are looking at his laning phase as an area to exploit. Maybe it was who he maybe who he said it. Can't remember because my memory sucks. But the point is that people are saying that his laning phase isn't so strong. It's something I'm going to try to keep my eye on, but I haven't noticed it myself. But anyways, just thought I would throw that in there.
Yeah, I don't got too much to say about EG. I think
Let's go
as
dig.
as you outlined before, this team does live and die by Jisuke for the most part, but there are some other areas that could be improved.
All right, let's go over to Dignitas. Now, Dignitas, I think we're starting to get to the area where there are less problems with these teams because as you get obviously, if you're winning, it's harder for those problems to really shine. With that said, Dignitas is not without their problems. I think that their biggest problem really showed this weekend specifically. For me, it was their macro set up around dragons and barons, and it was very similar to what we saw with Immortals, where Immortals was never really getting to dragon time. Like you have a really big lead and you're just late to objectives. We saw the same thing happen with Dignitas, and I think that was also versus TL.
Yes, it
And
was.
so with that, you could just say, well, maybe TL's very good around objectives, and they are. But if you are winning games and you're strong and able to fight, I don't think that you should be getting to dragon late. I think that you should at least be in contention for some vision around dragon or baron or whatever it is. And I don't think that we're seeing a lot of that out of Dignitas.
Yeah, I never thought, looking back at the spring split, I never thought that this was a team that had really insane macro or was a very insane team when it came to the later portions of the game. So I'm not really surprised at all that they did have some like misexecutions come late game, specifically in that Team Liquid game. Uh, the only really two things I have on Dignitas for me is I think sometimes they try to outsmart themselves a little bit in draft, and they are one of the, I think, the most exciting teams to watch in the LCS in terms of their draft, because they do have a lot of crazy drafts, like when they whip out the Darius jungle in week one. They did the Seraphine bot against Cloud9, where basically nobody's been playing Seraphine since the end of Spring Split. Like, that champion has completely fallen off a cliff after the Moonstone nerfs and the reworks and whatnot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I do have a problem with where they're picking those various champions, because I think if you look at the Darius jungle, everyone thought it was super exciting to see, and like Dardoch's going back to his A to Z jungle challenge or whatever. But I thought the spot that they picked Darius in like wasn't very good to begin with. They picked like Darius in a full frontline comp with low damage and no enablers. Like, that is the perfect kind of jungler that you want to run with like your Karma or your Lulu mid lane, one that can speed up that champion, shield him up, let him dish out the damage. And in that game, we kind of just saw like Dardoch get one kill early on and then completely fall off a cliff because he's playing Darius jungle with like a low damage comp and no enablers. And I touched on Seraphine a little bit, but yeah, that Seraphine performance against Cloud9, wasn't it? Obviously, there was like the clip where he shot the Seraphine alt backwards before the Drake spawned, and obviously the game was completely over at that point, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a good look.
That game just kind of felt over as soon as Vulcan hit the 3-man taunt over at Rift Herald. Cloud9 sent 4 players to the fight and still came out on top in that fight as their
Yeah,
bot laner still pushing
it
and
was a
getting plates. So
4v5, and they killed 4. They went 4 for 1.
yeah, it was an absolute disaster right there. We saw Blabber back on the Olaf, which is kind
That
of a
was
scary
good. Yeah.
thought for some teams. Yeah, it's scary if you realize Blabber is going to get back on the Olaf. That's definitely one of his better picks. But yeah,
It's supposed to
even
get
though
buffed soon as well.
so that's another area where I say like Dig's macro setup isn't that great around objectives. Like they were late getting there and then they just got absolutely roasted in a 4v5 fight because they didn't have position on Herald. Um, even though that I think is their main problems, I still have lots of good things to say about this team. I think in every single role, they've looked good or better. Dardoch is having a really good start to the summer split. Um, I don't think he's getting enough credit for just how good he has been. He is having such a good influence on the game. His kill participation is way, way up. He's dying way, way less. And I don't know what more you can ask for out of Dardoch. And I've said this for the last year and a half now that I think Afromu is heavily underrated, although I will say that actually this weekend he did have a couple of int plays, but mostly Afro's looked really, really good as well. And I think those two players are two guys that I don't think get nearly enough credit. And I think they are the reason that this team does not at all belong with the other lower teams in the LCS, the lower tier teams. I think that Dignitas is on the same tier as TSM. There, I said it. That is my hot take, if
That
you
is
will.
a hot take, I would definitely say.
So right now, I would say C9 and 100 Thieves are in their own tier. TL when they're back at full strength, excuse me, and then but when they're not at full strength, I would still say TL 100 or TL, TSM, and Dignitas are all around the same level. I do think that it is time people start giving this team more credit than they're getting.
Well, maybe a bit of foreshadowing, but we do have a Dig TSM matchup on Saturday. We'll get into that
Yes,
probably a
we
little bit
do.
later.
Yep.
But yeah, like you, I do think this team is actually pretty solid for the most part. I think they have strong individual players, and there are some points in the game where they do struggle. I think we're right in saying that their macro around objective controls could be better. Do I think it's the worst thing in the world? No. But I think against these strong team fighting teams who are very good at objective control, and I'm mainly talking about the top teams in the Cloud9, Team Liquid, TSM, and 100 Thieves, because I think, like you, they're ahead of all these other bottom teams. They're at the
Yeah.
top of the bottom teams, and to push forward and challenge the Cloud9s, the Team Liquids, the TSMs, and what have you, they need to get better in that area because I think for the most part they're pretty solid. The last thing that I'll say about this team, we already talked about it before. Their coaching staff is just like pulling out their strong players. One thing that we talked about so much last year in Summer Split was the whole Lorlo and Viper situation in top lane, where Viper was absolutely griefing LCS games, and Lorlo had come in at one point to their LCS team. He went 3-1 in a weekend, looked really, really good, got subbed out, never got played ever again, and Viper was like pretty much the main reason that this team was like fell off super hard in Summer Split. And yet again, we have a player who performed really, really well week one. Soligo looked great. I think we all recognize that he had a pretty good spring split. Gets subbed out for Yasui, and we'll really have to see how this whole plays out, because I think more often than not, we're going to see Soligo come back in within a few weeks.
Yeah, and with that said, I think Yusui looked good still. So maybe they are interchangeable. Maybe they're both good. But from what we saw out of Soligo, I have a little bit more faith just because I've seen more of it.
I thought
So
Yasui looked all right. I didn't think it was anything special.
he had a good Akali game. The other one was on Lulu. What else did he play? Yeah,
I
I still thought he looked good. Honestly, I didn't think he looked out of place. I just think that Soligo's just a little bit better. I have a little bit more faith in Soligo, let's say. But
I do
yeah,
too.
small sample size, I guess, for Yusui. I
Mm-hmm.
can't see 3 games and be like, no, this guy ain't it, or yeah, this guy's it. Like, you can't go either way with that, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, we got Team Liquid up next.
Um. Okay, so this is a little bit more recency bias. But the problem with Team Liquid was Jensen this weekend. I thought he had a pretty bad weekend. I thought that he looked really shaky, which is not usually what we're used to seeing out of Jensen. People that know my opinions on Jensen know that I actually have a really high opinion on Jensen. But yeah, I just thought this weekend he really struggled, and that's why I say there's a little bit of recency bias with this one. Right now, he didn't look too good in the mid lane this week.
Yeah, he definitely had some. He had an off week, let's say.
Yeah.
Didn't look that great on the Viego against EG. But do I think that Jensen that we saw this weekend is one that we're going to continue to see? No. I think this guy is. He's probably the most reliable mid laner in the LCS historically, second behind Bjergsen in terms of
Yep. No, I
just
completely agree, actually.
that he's just a proven talent and will always play to a high level when the time comes. But for me, I don't have a lot on Team Liquid other than I think the obvious one is Tactical's int moments that he has. He basically has one a game where he will just absolutely Arcane shift into a team, step too far forward to deal damage. Kaisa ult in, Tristana jump in. Basically, at this rate, he has one int moment a game. Whether
Which is
that's
too much, honestly.
it
That is
is,
too much.
and
Yeah.
especially playing AD carry, you can't get away with that as much as you could on like a jungler or a support.
Yeah.
And I don't think in all of these int moments, sometimes are not at like the most crucial moment of the game, like a big Baron team fight or like a big Dragon team fight. Often some of these are coming from when Team Liquid was very far ahead, and it doesn't have a huge effect on the game. But you don't really want to like fall into those tendencies and like continue to do that, because when the big moments come, like we've kind of seen in the spring split, uh, you don't want your AD carry running it down in important games.
Yeah, so I mostly agree. The only thing that I would maybe challenge a little bit is I don't know if it's happening every game. Like saying that there's one per game makes it sound like it's happening every game. But it is happening more than it should, and I think that's something that we can definitely agree on. That he is sometimes just straight up costing them games, and that's something that we saw this weekend on the Kaisa. He kind of just inted, trying to do too much damage. He tried to 1v2. What was it, like Ezreal
Yeah,
and
Ezreal
Aatrox?
Aatrox, yeah.
That was, yeah, that kind of just cost them the game as they're sieging. There could be a lot of issues. Honestly, you could argue a lot of things as to how they could have closed out that game versus EG,
Mm-hmm.
but that's one that really stands out when specifically talking about tactical. The other things that I'll say about this team is that I think Santorin looks night and day in comparison from his Rumble versus his Volibear. I don't know about you. I've seen enough Volibear. I'm done with it. I don't think that champion is that good. Santorin's Rumble looks great. I think that he just looks really good depending on which champion he's on. He looks very good or very bad. I like the Rumble. Fuck off, Volibear.
The main thing with Santorin for me is I feel like when he joined Team Liquid at the start of season 11, it was like how I described it was you were getting the best of both worlds, where you had this guy who could play the aggressive jungle styles like Broxa, and he could also play the supportive passive styles like Smithy did previously for Team Liquid. But it just feels like, for the most part, what we've seen of Santorin so far is the more passive side of him than the aggressive side. And yes, obviously, I think a majority of that is due to the meta that we've seen and the big Hecarim Udyr meta early on in the spring split. But like you kind of mentioned, when he's put on this more aggressive style of champion with Volibear, it's not even like he's going for plays and he's like fucking them up. Like, he's not even going for plays. And you get to a point in the game where you're playing a playmaking early game champion like Volibear, and you haven't done anything for 20 minutes, you're just going to be so weak in comparison to the rest of the game state, where it's hard to make an impact on the game. And I do agree that I think his Rumble is much, much better than his Volibear, but I do wonder how the jungle meta is going to evolve if Rumble is no longer a top tier champion, what that's going to look like, what style is he going to play, and if he can kind of return to that, I think, better form that he had on FlyQuest. Because I think at this point, I would say hasn't been playing up to that level that he did on FlyQuest.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, he was a little bit more gank heavy on FlyQuest and had a lot of success with it. Maybe Volibear is just specifically not his champion. And maybe there are other junglers that can gank more often, and he could be more effective on. I don't know. Maybe I'd like to see him on Xin Zhao. Maybe I want to see him on Lee Sin.
Well, he did play a
Um,
Xin Zhao game, I think, but he just didn't do a
I don't
whole lot.
remember.
It was
I
the
don't
game
remember
against
how it went.
Immortals. He just didn't do anything.
I see. Hmm. Anyways, the other thing that I got to give him credit for is he read Svenskeren like a book in that game. He had two counter ganks that just completely roasted Svenskeren both times with the ultimate. I don't know if you remember both of them. One was mid lane, one
I
was
remember,
top
yeah.
lane. He was in the right place at the right time both times, and
Some
so yeah,
Brothers
that
Venge
was
shit.
he just got completely jungle gapped. Svenskeren did in that game. Santorin just jungle gapped him, and so a lot of props there. The other thing I'll say about Jenkins is there's a lot of talk about, well, if Alfari was in, he would be doing way better than Jenkins. Okay, sure. Alfari is one of the best top laners NA has ever seen, so yeah. Um, Jenkins has still looked really good though, guys. I think people are really overlooking just how good he's been. Okay, he's pretty much one tricking GP. Fine, he's been really good on GP. Okay, like I'm a guy that I don't want to let stats dictate things too much, but I did look that he is at number one right now. I think he's tied with someone else for number one CSD in the top lane right now. And yes, small sample size, no problem. But if you're number one in CSD at 15, you can't be bad. Like I could totally say someone. I could totally see the argument that someone's like, well, he's still not the best top. Fine, no problem. But like, can you really be at number 1 in CSD at 15 over 6 games and be performing bad? Not really, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about Jenkins. I think he's been, as you said, solid. I don't know about really good.
I
He's
think
been
he's been
good.
really good for sure. Watch his team fight. Watch his barrels in team fights. There was
Um,
one fight that I said to you I really criticized him for that I think he bailed too quickly. Which game was that one? It was around Baron. Which game was that?
is it the
I
EG
rewatched it
game
today.
or the Dig game?
I don't know, but anyways, he bailed on the team fight too early. He definitely still had barrels up and could have done more, but the majority of fights, his barrels are fantastic. They are very, very good, and he's putting out a lot of damage in team fights. If people go back and watch Jenkins' games over the last 2 weeks, you will see that his GP is outputting a lot of damage, and he is having such a huge impact on these team fights. And so, in lane and out of lane, I think he's been great on GP. I don't want to call him the best top laner because when you're playing mostly one champion, well, yeah, it's just I can't do that, especially if it's only been 2 weeks. But for people thinking that he's really underperforming, I highly disagree. I think he's been very good.
Yeah, I don't think he's underperforming at all. I think he's been good, and that's what I put it at. I just want to see, as you kind of mentioned, a bigger sample size. I want to see more games of him, and I also want to see more games where he's not on the Gangplank, because he said 2 games not on Gangplank. The Akali game against Immortals, which was pretty good for the most part. Um, I-
Yeah,
he had a good KDA at the end, but I don't think that was indicative of his performance. Not to say he performed badly, but I do think he was playing Akali in a game against double AD carry, and you're just gonna kill people in that. And obviously had that pretty terrible Lulu game against Cloud9. But I just want to see more of Jenkins. I'm excited to see what he's going to look like because at the very minimum, we're getting 2 more weeks of Jenkins before Alfari comes back to the Team Liquid team. And I think he's got potential for sure.
yeah. Well, actually, hold on. Is it maybe only one more week? It might just be one more week
Well,
because he'll play on the
June.
20th. But they said June 27th.
So
That'll be
that
the
I would assume that means at the end of that LCS week, or unless Alfari's going to play on that Sunday, but that would be stupid. So
Oh, okay. So the 27th is the sun. Okay, then yeah, then I think you're right then. Okay, so I think you're right then. We
at
should
the
expect 2
least,
more
we have 2
weeks.
more weeks of Jenkins, or
Okay.
if I don't know, we have 2 more weeks.
That would be weird for them to put him in on just the Sunday or
See
whatever it is.
see you 2 weeks. Go next.
Yeah. Okay.
You got 100
100
T.
Thieves.
I'm gonna be honest here.
What a turnaround, man.
I don't have a lot of problems with this team right now. The only thing that I'll say about 100 Thieves is like, what does it look like when Abadagi is behind? Because he's basically been even or ahead in every single game, and outside of laning phase, he's been absolutely smurfing the game. Yeah,
Which
sure.
is
Like
like
people might say, like, oh, well, he's just playing Karma and shielding opponents, but like, he's not dying on the Karma
Mhm.
either. Like, he's not dying.
Not this week though. He played
Oh,
Karma last week.
oh
Sure.
yeah, and
This week
he's
this week he
shitting
was
on
the
everybody with a
Akali and
collie.
Orianna. Yeah,
Yeah.
he had 2 very good weeks, and I tweeted out something along the lines of like, "What more can you ask for out of this guy?" He's had such a really good start. Yeah, things are looking a lot better for 100 Thieves, but I do want to remind people they had a very good start to spring as well. Um, However, I don't think they'll fall off this time because I do think that their mid lane just got so much better, and I think that they got better coaching. Now, again, we can't hypothesize on coaching and blah 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 all the shit I normally say about coaching. But it's true. We can't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And so I mean Reaper went in and they started winning. Hooray, Reaper. Like what am I supposed to say? Um yeah, I guess Jensen on Hotline League tonight had some really good things to say about Reaper, and he said that Reaper had a really good effect on him as a player, and so I guess I'll just have to take his word for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Go
So
ahead.
I just wonder what this team looks like if Abadage falls behind. Mainly just because it's been pretty obvious in almost every single game they've played so far, they've been playing through Abadage to some extent. Whether it's the support of Karma and he's the one buffing up all his teammates to go forward, or he's the one playing the carries. The only other thing I have to say about 100 Thieves, is I just think Someday is not the player he used to be. I think, yeah, he's on the best roster that he's ever had previously, but I just think he's just a guy at this point. He's not like super carry Someday. He's just a
So
guy.
if we're going with our what's the problem theme, that is where I go first, is to the top lane. I don't know if I'm ready to give up on him just yet. I think that this year has definitely been a decline. Um, but I still
I
like
don't
I don't
think
know. He
last year was
dominated top
particularly
lane
good
for.
either.
See, I thought he looked good last year, but he was on a bad team. I guess I thought he looked good more in spring than in summer last year. But um, yeah, I guess it's still hard to say because I thought that he looked mostly good this summer. He did have the one Wukong, was it Wukong? I think it was Wukong where he looked a little bit lackluster last week. But for the most part, he's looked pretty decent, and so I wouldn't necessarily call it a problem per se. But I do agree with you that he has not been what we were used to seeing out of him.
Yeah, like on Hotline League, Mark was like, he was talking about Someday for a quick second, and he was referencing like, oh, like, yeah, like Someday, he's like still a really good carry player. Like, remember when he hit that like huge 4-man Jack stun on the team? I was like, dude, that was in 2018. That is 3.5 years ago. Like, the fucking
Was
guy
it
is not
really?
this. That's dude. Like, everyone
I
keeps
didn't know
reference,
that.
but like my problem with the whole Someday argument is like people keep referencing how he's such a great carry player and like, oh, like they just need to get him back on carries and he'll be a pretty good carry player. Like, dude, like that was so long ago. Like he's played carries since then, hasn't had the same impact and hasn't been that great of a like bruiser tank player either. Not to say he's been bad, but he just hasn't been as great as
Yeah.
he used to be. I think if you
Well,
go back, you look at Someday in like late season 7 when he was on Dignitas and Dignitas beat Cloud9 in a playoff match, and you go over to season 8 with 100 Thieves, awesome year. And early on in season 9 was looking really solid as well, but I think ever since season 10, he's been on the slow decline.
Well, and one thing that I do have to say, and I could be getting wrapped up in this myself, is that a lot of times people hold on for too long to play.
They do.
Be the case with me for this. I've mentioned that many times about Hooney prior to joining TSM. There were a couple of years where I thought Hooney was just a bad top laner. People could rely on ganking top and ganking Hooney the same way they could rely on ganking Jizuke now. Like, same kind of thing. You could rely on Jizuke dying, you could rely on Hooney dying for a solid couple of years. I think since Hooney has gotten better and has learned to kind of hold back and not just run it down in the top lane. And so I think that TSM Hooney hasn't been, or has actually been a lot better. But it's the same idea that people were holding on to Hooney as if he was still a top tier player for a couple of years when he was just not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be what's happening with Someday. The only difference for me is that I don't think Someday has been um, has declined for as long as Hooney had, and so that's where I think it's a little bit different. I think
Yeah,
that we've seen about a year of Someday decline, whereas I think Hooney was about 2.
yeah. I still think that Someday has that potential to be that player again, but it's not what I'm expecting. Like I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people are expecting him to return to that form, but I
Yeah.
just don't see it happening. I think it's more likely that we see the same Someday that we have.
And to highlight some players that have declined and come right back to perform well again, I would point to Afromu. I think he was someone that had declined pretty hard in 2019, 2020, and 2021. I thought that he's been a lot better again. I thought that he found himself. Who else? Well, I guess Hooney would be a good example. I thought Hooney looked awful in 2019 and 2018 as well. But I think Hooney started to look a lot better. Those are the kinds of players that I'm talking about when I'm referring to players that had declined but kind of
Santorin,
found their game again. Santorin, yeah, that's a pretty good example as well.
bit
I wouldn't
older,
even say
but
that the difference with Santorin is that it's not that I thought that he found it again. It's that I thought he got even better than what his old peak was. Let's say if he had a peak of let's hypothetical numbers here. If he had a peak of an 8 out of 10 with TSM way back in the day, I would say that his FlyQuest was a 9 out of 10. I would say that he peaked even higher the second time he came back. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily expecting that with Someday, but I'm not ruling it out. Let's say that.
I would agree.
Or TSM is next.
TSM,
Oh, actually,
TSM,
one other thing. The other thing. Sorry, I know you might have changed the thing already. The
troll.
one last thing that I wanted to say with 100 Thieves is that um, with what we've seen out of Abadage so far, they are looking really, really good, and a lot of people are hyping them up to maybe win the split. Now, I don't know if I'm there yet, but the reason why I think some of this hype is warranted is because he has literally played 3 different styles and looked good on all of them. And I think that's a really good sign considering 100 Thieves couldn't even look good on one of them when they had Demonte. No offense to Demonte. It was control mage meta. He couldn't play control mages whatsoever. We saw Abadage look very good on the Orianna. We saw him look good on Karma and Akali. He played 3 different styles. That is a very, very good sign for 100 Thieves, and that's why I don't think that they will fall off like they did in spring. That was the last thing that I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they're up there in terms of contention to win the split. If I had to redo my power rankings, they'd be at number 2 for me, and I think you could make the argument for 1, and there wouldn't be a whole lot of rebuttal from my end. I think it's kind of like personal preference at that point, and I'm a little biased, obviously.
I got another last thing, quote unquote, to say. Huhi's Gragas was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I loved Huhi's Gragas. It was really, really good this weekend, and I think that he deserves a shout out for that. I think the bot lane looked really, really good, but I mean, we've always expected it out of FBI. I thought Huhi looked like himself again, which is another thing to be excited for 100 Thieves. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with the 100 Thief stuff. I promise.
Yeah, I think Gragas is super underrated. I think that champion's actually really strong. I think the tank Gragas is no more, but like I think AP Gragas is still solid.
Okay, let's go TSM.
Here's what I'll say about TSM.
Okay, go ahead.
I think TSM currently has the potential to win the split. I think it's possible. I think the way that they play and the style they play has what it takes to win NA. However, I think it's completely worthless at international events. I
do not think they have what it takes to win the split.
Okay, I mean I think it's possible. I think they can win. However, I think should they make it to Worlds or what have you, I think it'll be an exact repeat of what happened last year with the 0-6. Because I think what am I trying to say? They don't do anything in the fucking early game. They do absolutely nothing. And I think it's very easy, specifically in North America, to just sit back, do nothing, and punish mistakes from other teams. Because I think, obviously our middle to bottom of the pack teams aren't as good. And even some of our top teams, like Cloud9, can go for these very over-aggressive plays, which can often set them behind. And I think there are multiple scenarios where I think TSM could end up on top. But I just think the style they play is completely useless outside of North America.
So I want to be very clear about this. When I say I don't think they have it, I mean they don't have a reasonable chance that is worth mentioning. So I guess I would say sub 10% chance of winning the split, that kind of thing. Whereas like I would say that TL, 100 Thieves, and Cloud9 all have a above 10% chance of winning the split. I do actually think that TSM is worse than those 3 teams. So I'm sorry to all the TSM fans because I actually really do feel bad for TSM fans. They looked so good last week. TSM looked like they were really going to be a team to compete, and then they just came out and laid an egg this week. And it's like I started thinking about it, and I thought this team looks inconsistent in every single role. Every single player on this team is very inconsistent, and that's why I don't think they have a significant chance of winning. Of course, there's always a chance for any team, for that matter. There is technically a chance that Golden Guardians wins the split, just like I have
like
a chance
it's still mathematically possible.
Right, just like that, I have a chance of winning the lottery. Right, like that's where I say I don't think TSM has a reasonable chance. I like, of course, they have a chance. Everyone does, but not one that I would bank on. And I will eat my words if they do end up winning the split. We can reclip this or whatever. That's totally fine because yes, there's always a chance. But when I look at them in comparison to Team Liquid, 100 Thieves, and Cloud9, I just think there's 3 other teams that I have as more likely to win the split, and that's why I don't have it for TSM. I think that they are way too inconsistent in every role. Spica, despite you mentioned that there was an interview or something where he was saying they were trying to be proactive. I wish I could have seen a link or read the article or whatever.
I saw it on Twitter during the games, or it was before the games. It was on like Wednesday or something. But he basically just said that like we're working a lot on being more proactive in the early game, and we're not going to be so team fight reliant when they have not done that a single game this whole split.
So here's the thing, I think that's the right way to look at the game. I think you should try to be proactive, and while I do give them credit for trying to, I just don't think they've been proactive enough. And sometimes when they when they are the ones to make that first play, like I mentioned earlier in the FlyQuest game, they get punished because they don't pull it off properly. They went for the play and PoE just sat mid without TPing to the play. Someone's got to place a ward down, or he could have TP'd to one of the minions in the lane to go for that fight. As soon as you see FlyQuest TPing, you're playing Lucian. You're supposed to be strong in the early game. PoE, you got to TP to that. And I think that if he TPs, they don't get 2 for 1. That's how the trade ended up going. And That if I want to talk more about inconsistency, PoE is another place to go. We've talked so many times about how he looks good on control mages, but not so much when he's not. When he's on the Lucian, he's a little bit lackluster, and I'm just buying into that more and more the more I see it. He's great in lane with the Lucian, but doesn't really have a lot of effect on the rest of the game later on. And that's difficult for me to say because I'm a big PoE fan, but I just don't see it happening. When it comes to their bot lane, Sword Art is engaging so often where there's no world anyone on TSM
The
can even
$6
follow
million
up.
man.
It happens so often where he's engaging, especially it's usually on Leona, where there's no world anyone from TSM can follow up. And it's like, what did he think was going to happen when he engages there? And so when I see these things, like there's times that he looks really good as well. But again, when I see all this inconsistency, it's hard for me to imagine TSM being able to beat C9 100 Thieves and Team Liquid. Like there's a way that one of those teams falls off, but I don't know if all three of those teams can fall off and TSM can beat them. And so that's why I don't think they're going to win the split.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, if anyone got the impression that I thought TSM was going to win the split, I don't think they're going to win the split. But I just think that the way that they play the game and the toolkit that they have specifically for North America, it can be a winning strategy in North America. And I think it's the thing where I'm just off about TSM is they always preach that they're trying to reach international success, but then do everything in the regular season to suggest the opposite and just try to play it as cookie cutter as possible, which is what I really don't like. Like if you're gonna go and say all these things that we're gonna try to be more early and proactive, or even like way back in the day when like this was like season 7, 8, and they talked about how they wanted to like completely switch up the game and they wanted to get Bjergsen on all these various like early game roaming style of champions, and they never did that. There was like that whole meme with like, oh, we want Bjergsen to be playing Galio because this is when Galio was like the most broken mid laner in the game, and they just never did it. And we could ramble on about TSM's poor international performances all day, but they just haven't done anything to suggest that they're working towards international success. It just seems like like they can say that all they want, but their play doesn't prove that whatsoever.
Yeah, I really feel bad for TSMs because last week was like, it was like, oh my God, maybe they did so much in the offseason. They got so much better. They're going to come into summer and start smashing kids. Great. And then they come out this week and they look so lackluster that it's like,
Yeah.
boy, it's been, I guess, 6, maybe you could argue 7 months, depending on when they started in like December. Like I'm sure the team started scrimming and stuff in December. So it could be 6 or 7 months that this team has been practicing together, and they still look really bad this weekend. It's not a good sign when you look that bad this late into, like what's another 4 months going to be, or 3 months? I guess June, July, August, and then September you got playoffs. So about 4 months. If they haven't really improved that much in the 6 or 7 months, I don't know what another 4 months is going to do. But I will say, I still think Bjergsen is probably a great coach because we know he's got a great mind for the game. I think you've got the great coaching staff behind you. If there is a team, if there's a coaching staff to change things the way they are going, I do think Bjergsen is the guy. So I will say that.
With all that being said, I still expect that TSM will be a top 4 team. I am not of the opinion that I think Dig is better than TSM.
I didn't
But
say that. Did I say that? I didn't say that. Just to be
okay,
clear,
well, you said Dig was going to beat TSM.
I said they're in the same tier.
Okay,
I
well,
said they're on the same tier as TSM.
I guess my assumptions that you're going to pick Dig over TSM means that you think Dig is a better team than TSM.
Did I say pick Dig over?
Okay, well,
I have them in the same tier. I have them going 4-5. So just to be clear, it's
Okay.
not that I think Dig is better. I have them both 4-5. I think they are in their own tier, and I would put TL ahead of them. I guess.
I guess what I'll say is your prediction will be indicative to what you have as 4 and 5.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I might take Dignitas because I like to take upsets, but I guess I would probably go TSM over Dig, honestly. But I think they're in the same tier that I don't think it's far and away one side or the other. That's how I would put
Okay.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
nevertheless, I still think that this will be a team that will contend in playoffs. I don't expect that they'll drop like a fat dookie like they did in that FlyQuest game consistently throughout the regular split. FlyQuest seems to have their number. FlyQuest is now like 3-0
Well, see,
in the head-to-head
that's
on
the other
TSM.
part about how inconsistent they are. They're 3-0 against Team Liquid and 0-3 against FlyQuest. If that's not inconsistency, I don't know what is.
I guess, yeah.
That's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, enough about TSM. Fuck a TSM. We got Cloud9 next up. Or last up, I guess. You're sporting the C9 jersey this episode.
Yes, I am. You want me to
Um,
start?
yeah, you can go ahead. I don't have too much to say, so go ahead if you got something to say.
I think the problem with TSM is that the
We're talking about
blabber
Cloud9.
ints
You said TSM.
that with Cloud9 is that the blabber ints are still too often. We see them way too often. And I think that when it comes time for international competition, like we just saw at MSI, I don't think Worlds is going to be much different. I don't think Blabber will have a lot of success on the international stage. And I think that if he continues to have the occasional int like he has in North America, I think it's just going to look that much worse on the world stage. That is my problem with Cloud9. And the other thing too is that even seeing Perks at MSI, Perks didn't really look too hot either. And so, yeah, they look great in North America. This goes back to the you're good in NA, but are you good on the world stage? Probably not with what we've seen so far. And that I think is what the problem is with Cloud9.
Um, pretty much similar to what you said. Not Blabber specific because I think it's more of a team thing, but I think they can get a bit over aggressive sometimes when it comes to dives around the map, making really forced plays. You can kind of throw it back to that 100 Thieves C9 game where they went really deep on Abadage in mid lane and Perks flash W'd the bush. And like it was clear that like Cloud9 was trying to force that gank super hard because they had blown the Karma Flash earlier in the lane. But I do think sometimes Cloud9 can get really over aggressive, whether they're using it. Whether they're using it as a tool to get out of a small hole in the early game, or they're just like too ahead and won't really sit on their lead and scale. I think we can. What was it? The second PSG Talon game at MSI where they had the Kog'Maw comp, and they're like taking a team fight in like River randomly, where like Blabber's engage.
Blabber.
Yeah, like Blabber's engaging on Leona, but like it's not even like Blabber's engaging. Like they're calling for a fight because like the rest of Cloud9's fighting. Like it wasn't like Blabber ran in and inted. The whole team went for the fight when they have the better scaling comp, and they were like maybe 2K gold behind, and like basically there was no reason to take a fight. But like you said, I don't think you can be doing these over aggressive plays that result in, random deaths across the map and find success internationally.
Now, one thing I will say is that when games kind of become a fiesta, that's where there is more variance in games. And so maybe it's the right strat to come into Worlds with, although I still wouldn't say that it's a very effective strat. I think that it's a more effective strat if you are just straight up worse than the other team. You want to make the game as much of a fiesta as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could make that argument. But if that's your strat going into Worlds, right?
Yeah. The only
Yeah.
other thing that I quickly had to say about C9, which I don't even know if I would consider it a problem, but it's just that King has just like not been involved at all.
Yeah.
Like it feel
I
like
think it's a problem. I think it's a problem because you might have Sven not playing with the team for all of summer, and I think that's what maybe the problem would be. So it's still an 80 carry thing, but we don't know, right? They said there's rumors because of what Max Waldo said, saying that maybe he might not play for all of summer. I think that's the problem, if you ask me.
yeah, I mean, but it was just more so like I remember in King's first interview when Cloud9 picked up their first win, he talked about how like the LCS games and scrims are a lot faster paced than what he's used to. So he's not necessarily on the button with like pushing waves and rotating to plays or like roam timers at a base. And I do think that in a lot of the Cloud9 victories, we're seeing basically success around the map that's everywhere but bot lane. And if it is the case, it's like Vulcan roaming and making a play across the map while King is just kind of like in the side lane killing minions, hitting towers. And again, not to say I don't know if this is a problem, but it feels like from the 6 games that we've seen King so far, he's not been a player that you can play through. But we haven't seen that yet, so we don't know. But it hasn't been a strategy that Cloud9's employed.
So what I'll add to that is that Fudge looked fucking terrible just 5 months ago, right?
Yeah.
I will say that C9 has had a very good history of developing players and making young, new players look very good. We saw it with Licorice as well. We saw it with a bunch of guys on
Oh,
Cloud9, honestly.
Blabber.
They have a very good history of that. Yeah. So
Zazel when he first came in.
while I don't think King has been particularly great in the early going, I do think he's on the right team. You got a lot of really good players to play with and to learn from. I mean, what better guy than Perks is on your team? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he's in a very good environment to learn, and well, maybe there's more games in summer as well, so he's got more games to maybe get better. So that could be I don't know what the word is, but that could be a good sign. Let's just say that.
Yep. Alrighty.
Oh, okay. So before we move on, I did want to actually ask you. This was more so about the bottom tier teams because earlier we were talking about how I wouldn't say that Golden Guardians is an absolute shit tier team anymore because we haven't seen a lot out of them. So it made me start to wonder: are you convinced that the current two bottom teams, being CLG and Golden Guardians, will be the two teams that won't make playoffs?
Yes.
And how convinced are you?
Not
Like, do you got a
very.
percentage?
I think there is a 75% chance the bottom two teams are Golden Guardians and CLG.
I think that's the unfortunate part about the record carrying over, because if the records were completely erased,
I don't
I
think it would
think
honestly
either
matter
one,
too much.
really,
Yeah.
I'm still not that convinced that Golden Guardians is that bad now that they've subbed in solo. I think that I've been pretty vocal about this. I think that the upgrade over Niles is very significant. Um, and so I don't know if it's significant enough because I still think that they're struggling in the other areas. But I mean, again, it's small sample size, but they are on pace for 9 wins of this split if they keep winning one game per week, which is what they've done. So that means they would have 7 more wins. What are they at now? They're at 5. So that means they would end with 12. That means that FlyQuest would really have to take a shit, by the way,
Exactly.
because FlyQuest is at 9 wins. So
Mhm.
that's why I say, like, it sucks that the records carry over in this particular instance, because I'm not convinced FlyQuest is much better than them. Nor am I convinced CLG is that much better than them as well.
Yeah,
If
I
it
guess
weren't for the records carrying over, I would actually have no idea which two of those three that I would take.
I guess in the hypothetical world where the records didn't carry over, and you told me like which team did I have the most confidence in winning at the very minimum one game each week, I would pick both CLG and FlyQuest over Golden Guardians. So unfortunately, I think in almost every single scenario, I think Golden Guardians is the 10th place team, and I think that 8th place spot is most likely going to be fought between FlyQuest and CLG. Honestly, Immortals could be there if they go back to
I
like
don't think
Spring
they're
Split.
bad enough. I think
I
Immortals is
don't
just
think they
better.
are. I think they are
Yeah.
just better, but I think most likely scenario it's CLG and FlyQuest fighting for that 8th spot.
Okay, and tell me, feel free to hard flame me here, JNT. I'll give you a free
Sounds like I'm about
flame
to.
away card. Yeah, I'll give you a free flame away card. CLG goes ahead of FlyQuest. Do I still have too much faith in this dog shit CLG team?
What's the standings right now? FlyQuest has 9 wins, CLG has 6 wins.
Yeah, so they need to gain 3 wins.
And has FlyQuest played CLG already?
I don't know. I already forget. Let me check.
Because I feel like that's important. I feel like they did.
FlyQuest,
Yeah, they played in the first game of the split. That was
and
when.
FlyQuest beat them.
Yeah, yeah. FlyQuest is gonna. Yeah,
How did
FlyQuest
that
is.
game go?
That was the game where they gave Lickers Gwen and he curb stomped Finn.
Okay. I am going to stick with it though. This is another hot take,
I mean,
if you
like
will.
you've shown that you put your faith in CLG, and maybe it's a bit of
I
blind
wouldn't
faith.
say that. I wouldn't say that I've put my faith in CLG. That's a little bit extreme. I would say that I have a little bit more faith than most people and a little bit less faith in FlyQuest is what I would say.
Okay.
I think both of them are pretty bad teams. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, it's advantageous that FlyQuest has the 3-game buffer. That's what I'll
Yes,
say.
they do. Yeah.
If they were both even and they both have the same number of wins, I honestly think it's about a 50-50. But with FlyQuest having that like 3-win buffer, I think it's just way
Can't
more
believe
likely.
CLG almost took a game off Cloud9 this week. My
Yeah.
God, man. And if that was the case, like that one extra win means so much, right? If CLG beat Cloud9 this week, I think you'd probably be a lot more on board with me, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I mean you'd feel a lot
Yeah.
more confident because they beat Cloud9.
Yeah, I don't feel all that confident, and honestly, in this take, but I think I'm still going with the take. I think that CLG will overcome. And God, they got to pick up some wins somewhere. For the love of God. The thing is, I like FlyQuest too, so I want FlyQuest to pick up some wins as well. But like, I've dedicated myself to CLG this year. That's like, yeah. Anyway, okay, so that was fun. I gave you a free flame card. You didn't use it.
Well, I mean, what am I gonna say? Like,
Pop
there.
off, man.
Uh,
Okay, all right, all right. Let's go Popoff Beansoup since we're talking about Popoff. Um,
you go first because I
I,
think I know who you're gonna pick for Popoff.
dude, there was 3 different people that I could have picked. Okay, so I'm between Huhi on his Gragas, Perks on the LeBlanc, or Abadage. Which one do you think I'm going with?
Abadage.
Absolutely. That guy fucking tore shit up. I gotta go Abadage. While the other 2 were great performances, they were single performances, and Abadage has looked good since he came in all 6 of his games. Abadage looks great. That's all I'll say. It's a really good sign for 100 Thieves fans.
Yeah, I went with Perks. I thought, I think he flew a tiny bit under the radar because of how well Abadage played.
Yep, I agree.
I thought Perks had a really good week. He absolutely bent over FlyQuest with the LeBlanc. He had a really great Triss game against CLG, and what did he play against Dignitas? What did he play? He had a game against Dig. I don't remember what he played, but he had a good game.
I don't remember. My memory sucks,
Oh, he
man.
played Lee Sin, but he had a good Lee Sin game.
Oh, yes, he did. Yeah, yes, yes,
Yeah, he
yes.
had a really good lane. Yeah, I just thought Perks flew a little bit under the radar just because of how well Abadage was playing.
They did like a lane swap thing, right?
Yeah.
He went top, I think.
Well,
Did he go top?
one of the
Or did Dignitas
yeah,
swap? Maybe
Dig swapped. I thought. Yeah, they
somebody
swapped
swapped.
because they had the Akali. They put the Akali top lane against the Gwen or whatever.
Somebody swapped, and yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Perks actually looked really good. I think another reason why it didn't really stand out that much is because people kind of expect that out of Perks, especially when you're going up against CLG and FlyQuest,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's that. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Perks had a really good weekend. Bean Soup. Can you predict my Bean Soup as well?
No, but I went with Revenge.
Oh, true.
Man, fucking, that was so sad because he played so well week 1, and I just knew well, not that I knew, but I just had the fear that my expected problems with Immortals was going to be if a player just runs it down, and Revenge just kind of ran it down 2 of the 3 games.
Yeah, and I don't blame you because you've become a little bit of an IMT stan.
A little bit.
Myself a little bit too, but not probably not to the extent as yourself. But like it is a team it's a team that's not supposed to do well, and so you want to see these teams do well, the ones that aren't expected to. And so I do agree with you that it was a little bit disappointing. In all honesty, a little bit of a bean soup performance out of Revenge over the weekend. Yeah, I mean maybe get them on set more often, I guess. But yeah, lackluster. I went with Poe Belter.
Mm,
Need I say more?
nope.
He's walking up to Perks Tristana like that Tristana's a fucking Maokai or something. I don't even that's not even a good example, but damage wise.
Yeah.
Like as if Tristana doesn't do damage. Multiple occasions getting caught out in side lanes. Oh, Poe Belter. I hope that he returns to form. I'm not counting on it, but I'm hoping. So sad Poe Belter. Okay, let's talk about less sad stuff. This stuff is interesting to me. Some discussion about best of twos has come up recently, and I mostly don't like it, but I think you do, right?
I just think anything's better than best of ones, to be honest.
I just don't think the logistics make sense. You would have to, and I'm open to hearing what the suggestions are, but you would have to change the schedule completely because there's no way you could do 3 sets of best of twos, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like you can't do Friday, Saturday, Sunday best of twos. There's
I,
no fucking way.
I don't think it's possible with the changes that they've already made to the schedule, with them increasing the number of total games throughout the entire year and them changing to a 3-day broadcast where every team plays a game every day. I don't think it's possible, but I wish best of twos or best of threes would have been added in addition to these other changes that weren't made, and they may be a little bit different.
So I think to someone like you or me, I think best of twos or best of threes are great. I just don't think they're very practical for an average LCS viewer. Like, when the hell is anyone gonna watch FlyQuest play Golden Guardians if there's already like well, I guess maybe it wouldn't be 6 games of C9 TSM or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like if you played best of twos Friday, Saturday,
Yeah, yeah,
Sunday,
yeah.
like that's 6, right? So of course the schedule would have to change, but the point is you're asking viewers to watch so much more League of Legends at that point that I think people would just tune in for the TSM, the Team Liquid, the kind of like they already do in best of ones. And so I think if you switch to best of twos, you're just making that problem even worse. And the lower tier teams are going to have trouble getting fans to even watch them. So
Yeah,
I think that's one problem.
it probably has the same effects. It has like increased effects because we do see a huge viewership spike when we do have some sort of hype game, whether it's Cloud9 Team Liquid, Cloud9 TSM, TSM Team Liquid. You can even throw 100
Right.
Thieves in the mix there now. Like you do see a huge increase in viewership, and you unfortunately see a decrease in viewership when you see these various matchups like CLG versus Golden Guardians or Golden Guardians versus Immortals or any of those kinds. And I think that would only be heightened if it was best of twos, kind of to your point. But I do think that like yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because
Well,
I
on the
think.
other hand, you
Go,
would be
go ahead.
giving TSM fans more TSM. So like there's some good that comes with best of twos, right? There is.
Yeah, I think it's definitely better for all the hardcore fans, even the hardcore fans of the bad teams. They get to see more of their favorite teams play. But as you mentioned, it does really hurt the average LCS viewer who only tunes in for like maybe not even the whole LCS broadcast. They just tune in for that one game, or maybe they just tune in for that 1 or 2 games and isn't like us watching the broadcast from start to finish each day.
And the other thing about it is that, and some people have brought up that if you're doing best of twos, you just continue to put them all towards the record, like the end of the season record. So like if you, let's say you go 2-0 in the best of two, it's not like you get 1 point or 3 points. It's you literally get 2 wins towards your, I don't know, right now we have a 45 game season, but whatever the number, whatever the season number is,
Yeah.
you would just add both of those. To me, it still feels like a tie. Even if it's a 1-1, it still feels like a tie, even though both teams get a win towards their season record. I fucking hate ties, man. I fucking hate them. Maybe it's just I'm too NA, because I know a lot of European fans didn't really seem to be too bothered by best of twos when they did it in Europe, and a lot of them are still calling for best of twos. Honestly, I don't know what it is. I fucking hate ties. I hate them. You want to go out there and win, and I understand that. Yeah, you won one and you lost one, so it's not a tie. You did win and you did lose. To me, it's still going to feel way too much like a tie, and I hate that idea so much. That is Beansoup.
I don't know.
Beansoup is going 1-1 on the weekend, being like, yeah, we didn't like. To me, it doesn't feel like if you go 1-1 against a team, it doesn't feel like you beat them or like you lost to them. It feels like no one won.
I don't know. I'm not too bothered by whatever system they implement. Personal preference, I would rather they just did like if they did best of twos, it would be 1 win and 1 loss, as opposed to when they implemented best of twos in the LEC, formerly the EU LCS, when they did if you 2-0'd, you got 3 points for the win.
Yeah.
If you drew, went 1-1, you got 1 point, and if you lost, you got 0 points. I don't really like that format. I know it was pretty much copy paste off of the various soccer/football leagues, all the European ones, because that's the same system they use. Even the MLS here, they use the same system. I don't really like that one as much because I don't think it's as like. I feel like the League of Legends games are pretty cookie cutter. Like if you went 2-0, you beat them twice. It's not like you get 3 points for being a team twice. And if you went 1-1, you each won a game, so you get a point. Like I feel like that's kind of makes the most sense. And the whole reason why we're talking about this in the first place, because if people don't know, they run best of twos in Academy, and they did that. Did they start doing that last split, or was it this split that they first started?
I'm pretty sure that's this split.
Okay, well,
I'm like 99% sure.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure.
Basically, the point is they started running best of twos in Academy, and I think so far the response is that everyone has really enjoyed the best of twos, even the players themselves, because it's
Academy's
just
not the same though.
It's not.
I
It's
shouldn't cut you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it's not the same. I mean, that's definitely true that Academy's not the same, and I think if the players had their way, they'd probably have it. But I do think that it's like in the LCS's best interest in terms of sponsors, viewers. What I'm basically saying is revenue. Best of one is probably king.
The goal of the LCS is to win. The goal of Academy is to develop players. more games is more development. It makes way more sense in Academy for me. I think it's a good thing that they switched to best of 2. In fact, they could even do best of 3s in Academy, and I think that would be good. The more competitive games that count, the better for Academy. But when you bring in that best of 2 system to the LCS, I think that's where it doesn't feel like winning anymore. And that's the goal of LCS. You should try to win. And I know that it would still be one win or one loss that go towards your record, which I think is the better of the 2 versions of the 2 best of
Yeah.
2 versions. I know that's kind of weird to say, but I still don't think it's a good option. In all honesty, I still think it's quite Beansoup, like I mentioned. So I wouldn't be a huge fan of it, but there is this idea that's being talked about. I've seen, I think it was Peter Dunn. I think Peter Dunn brought it up somewhere. I probably saw it in Hotline League chat last week or something like that. Anyway, I saw it recently. I don't remember where. And there's been a few people throwing out this idea on Twitter, and I just really hope they don't go that route. But yeah, that's just me. I would actually really like to hear people's opinions. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment. I want to know, am I fucking crazy? Feel free to be completely honest, as long as you
You
won't.
get the free flame ticket for Blue Jay on this one.
I don't want to give the free flame ticket to people because I don't know these people and I don't want them to say inappropriate things, and that's just a nightmare. Be respectful.
You can flame me. I'll accept
Be
it.
respectful. I don't have any problem with you calling me out. Just be respectful. That's all I say.
Fair enough. I don't know. I just think as a hardcore viewer, anything be better than best of ones. I always want more league, especially when you do get those. Like, I feel like in a lot of these shit games, like the EG Fly game specifically, like, wouldn't you want a second game for that? Because there was no, like, yeah, sure, FlyQuest won in that EG FlyQuest game last week, but like there was no real winner. So I would love to see another game right after that to see who actually won. And I think part of, like, obviously, like, mental, like, fortitude plays into that because you could be really tilted after that game.
Rager, man.
I know, but I think, like, that's a case where best of 2s are actually really useful to prove, like, you know, judging teams in terms of who's better.
Yeah. There are definitely some good things that come with best of 2s. To me, I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it just does. It just does. I don't want teams to go 1-1 and not really feel like any team came out on top. That's to me how it would feel. Now maybe they go to best of 2s and I feel different about it when I actually see it, but yeesh, I don't have a good feeling about it if they do. But anyways.
All right. We got a lot of quick news, so I say we just get right into it because there's a lot.
We're not doing predictions.
Oh, yeah, shit. Okay. I have a scuffed version to bring up because I forgot to screenshot. That's not what I wanted to bring up.
Tisk, tisk, tisk. You and your scuffed version. That's also Beansoup.
It still works.
This week.
All right. First game, Friday, EG versus C9.
Oh, that's not bad at all. I thought it was going to look way worse than that.
No, but it's just not like you don't see them all on the same screen. EG C9, I'll take C9.
C9.
Team Liquid FlyQuest.
Team Liquid.
Yes. TSM Immortals.
TSM.
Yep. Dignitas Golden Guardians.
Dig.
Yep.
100 Thieves next.
It kind of just feels like we have like top 5 LCS teams versus bottom 5, so like it's pretty obvious, I think there.
So here's what I'll say: because there's a lot of inconsistency with EG and Immortals, I could see a day where these two show up and give Cloud9 a run for their money and TSM. Like if there's variance, I would say it's in those 2 games. I just don't see it being as likely enough for me to go with the upset on those ones. That's what
Alrighty.
It makes it sound like, oh, it's automatic that TSM's gonna win it, or it's automatic that Cloud9's gonna win. It's just I'm just not really willing to go for an upset on those ones.
All right, Cloud9 versus Immortals. Cloud9.
Cloud9.
Now here's an interesting one. CLG versus EG. Jamie, what you gonna do?
I think it's interesting because you want me to pay my taxes. I know how you're thinking.
Yep.
Which, by the way, you didn't pull up the records.
Aha.
Which also, by the way, you counted them wrong.
What do you mean? I didn't count them wrong.
You did.
I did? How so?
Yeah, because I got 10 wins this past weekend, and you only gave me 9. We'll go back and check it again later because I do want to double check.
Are you counting that you last minute swapped Golden Guardians and FlyQuest at the start of Sunday?
Yes. Yeah, I swapped that one. That would have been 11 if I got that one right.
Yeah, okay. We'll double. Okay, well
I did it. Yeah, we'll double
they're
check
incorrect.
Again,
I won't pull them up because if they're incorrect, but If you
I think I'm 15 and 15 is
okay,
the thing.
if that's true, just for the audio people, if that's true, we'll double check that. Jamie would be 15-15, and I would be 17 and 13.
Correct. That's what I'm pretty sure it's that. Anyways, let's get back to these. Oh, Jesus Christ, man. If I take CLG and they lose, I'm going to fucking lose it, man. I think I got to go EG on this one. I can't pay my taxes here.
I'm gonna go EG as well.
CLG's been stressing me out. And I will have to take them eventually if I am planning on them overtaking FlyQuest. But I don't think I can do it again here. I got to wait for them to play some shittier teams.
Okay. TSM versus Dignitas. I will take
This is
TSM.
where this is where I will take my upset. Like I said before, I do actually have. If I were to power rank, I would put TSM ahead, but it's not by much, and so I'll take the upset and go Dig.
Alrighty, 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest. 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
And TSM, or not TSM, Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians.
TL.
Yeah, these are some kind of obvious games this week. We have some
Yeah,
not so obvious ones
mostly.
on Sunday. These are actually kind of some banger games. I think the first 3 games are actually, honestly, the first
Wow,
4
okay.
games are actually, they're all good games. Fuck it. This is going to be a good day.
Okay. Dignitas over CLG for me.
Yes, same for me.
100 Thieves over TL for me.
I'm going to take Team Liquid.
Okay,
I don't think Abadage is going to be able to get a lead, or at least get a big lead over Jensen. I actually think Core JJ and Tactical have been pretty good this split. We obviously Tactical has had a couple int moments, but I still think that regardless, they've been both really good. I think I would actually take the Team Liquid bot lane over the 100 Thieves bot lane right now, and maybe,
Really?
yeah, I probably would.
I don't mind
It's
Core
close.
JJ over Huhi, but the bot lane altogether, I'm definitely going 100 Thieves.
I guess my only worry for this game is if Jenkins is not on Gangplank, just because I don't really know how it's gonna look. But I will take Team Liquid here.
It's weird to me that I think Team Liquid is an upset, and maybe not a big upset, but it's a slight upset with how good 100 Thieves has looked. Maybe I don't know. You could look at it an upset either way, but I'm going 100. You're going TL. Next up is Cloud9 and TSM.
I'll take Cloud9.
I will also take Cloud9.
Yeah.
I think TSM is just too inconsistent, but I will say TSM has a pretty good history of showing up against Cloud9. Remember that, folks.
Immortals versus FlyQuest. Here's the thing. I'm gonna pick Immortals. I'm gonna pick Immortals, but I feel like I might swap off of Immortals because I think they're gonna get dookied on in their other 2 games earlier in the week on Friday, Saturday, because they're playing really good teams. So I feel like it's gonna be more of a question of what did the 2 teams look like on the weekend, and then I'll probably make my true prediction then.
Okay. Anyways, I'm going Immortals.
I'll take Immortals for now, though. And then EG versus Golden Guardians, and EG for me.
Evil Geniuses. Okay.
Alrighty. Sunday is aiming to be a really hype day, but I think there are some pretty cookie-cutter matches Friday, Saturday. Hopefully we see a couple of upsets, maybe.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's go quick news. What's up on the quick news docket?
League is pretty much started everywhere else in the world now. All the major leagues are up and running. There's been some pretty hype LCK matches to start the split off. I
haven't watched any LCK yet. Like I watched a lot of
It's
LCK
pretty good.
last split. I didn't really watch. I gotta catch up on some LCK games.
Hanwha Life always gets screwed by playing top teams at the start of the split. Their first 2 games of the season were against Gen G and against T1.
Yeah, I'm Gen G.
They always get fucked. They always draw. For some reason, the last 3 splits in a row, Hanwha Life's first match has always been against T1. Don't know why. They just like that matchup week 1, I guess. Whatever.
I've been watching plenty of LEC. I gotta catch up on LCK. I don't normally watch a lot of LPL, but I gotta catch up on my LCK. But anyways, all the leagues have started. Poggers.
Next up, Arcane, the animated series that Riot is making. They released a teaser and said, I think, was it September? It's coming out, or in the fall?
I didn't know that. I know it's supposed to be sometime this year.
I think they said September, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay. Anyways, that should be pretty cool. Finally, get some lore from the Runeterra world.
Yeah, Jinx is like the main. Jinx is the main character or whatever. The little clip was like her using this punching machine. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
There's a new game mode on PBE, one of them rotating game modes. It looks pretty cool. I don't know if you've read about it.
Nope, I have no idea what it is.
Basically, to quickly summarize, you only get one summoner spell, and your other summoner spell is like a Silas ult, where you steal an
You
enemy ult.
steal
Yeah,
someone else's summoner
yeah.
spell, or you steal
No,
their
you sorry,
ulti?
you steal their ulti. It's called like Ultimate
Oh,
Spellbook.
that sounds like something.
It looks
That
really
sounds like
weird.
bugs. It sounds like
Well,
bugs to me.
yeah, the funniest thing that I saw so far from like clips on PBE of it is an Echo steals a Skarner ulti, and
Oh, I did hear about that.
he TP'd into a lane, Skarner ulted somebody, pressed R, and dragged him to the Nexus. And
That's really funny.
yeah,
I
I
did hear about that.
thought it was funny.
Okay.
Next up, Travis released a video on his YouTube channel basically discussing all the changes that Riot have made to the media availability for the LCS. Basically was voicing some displeasure with it.
So this is really important for people that don't know, because I think out of all the esports personalities, Travis has been there so long that I think he has the biggest influence from the media side of things. And I think he's exactly right that Riot's just doing something so fucking wrong. And I do have to give credit to Travis, because he knows that it's going to kind of hurt his relationship with some of these Riot people when he calls them out on their bullshit. But it's for the betterment of not just his content. If people think that it's him being selfish, it's not just better for him, it's better for people that are consuming the content too. Because it's just so dry and scripted and just dog shit. And so I think it's good that he's calling them out, being like, these press conferences, first of all, they suck. Second of all, the questions are like pre-scripted and like warped to the way Riot wants them to be, that they're not even authentic whatsoever. I just think that he deserves a lot of props for being the guy to call them out when they're just doing some real shit things. And so yeah, I think it's an interesting little video. If you guys haven't seen it on Travis Gafford's YouTube channel, go check it out. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway from it, if you just want a quick like TLDR, is that basically the way that Travis doesn't agree with the way that Riot is moving these various press conferences and Q&As for it to be all scripted, and he's sort of fearful that like that will become the norm moving forward, and just how weird it is, because this is the only media, esports media or traditional sports media, that is doing this kind of format.
Yeah.
That's
you watch the MSI thing that happened a month or two ago? Did you watch any of that? They had to like pre-submit questions.
Well, I heard about that.
And
I didn't. I don't know what
Riot
you're
like
referring to by like
picked
watch.
the ones. It was like something with John Needham, the guy. Yeah, he's like global head of esports, blah blah blah, and he's like,
I didn't see it, but I think you referenced it in the video, and if that's what
yes,
you're
he
referring
did.
to, I
He
didn't
did.
actually. I didn't watch that though.
I did. It was like, first of all, the video was actually still pretty good, because like we learned a lot about some of the stuff that Riot is trying to come out with, but it was so just not authentic. I don't know. I can't. It sucked. Let's just move on.
Next up, Verizon is a new sponsor of Team Liquid. I always thought it was kind of weird when teams pick up a sponsor that the LCS already has. So like the LCS is sponsored by Verizon, Team Liquid sponsored by Verizon. The LCS was previously. Oh, I didn't even know that. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
Dignitas has been with them for a while, I think.
Okay, I just don't really know how that all works when like an LCS teams becomes a sponsor or gets a sponsor that the LCS already has, and I don't know how that all works. I don't know if that affects anything, but yeah.
Yeah, just a cool little thing.
Yeah. Something that you were pretty interested in. Core JJ hit or I guess got the new highest total LP in Challenger or whatever. I think it was like 1,758. It was
1751.
51. Okay.
What he got, and which is a new record for North American solo queue, which is kind of cool. Like, League's been around for 11 years now. And he's got the record for the highest LP. Not too bad. That's pretty cool. Pretty good record.
Next up, some Immortals news. They're releasing Top Hoon and Potluck from their academy team.
I don't have much to say. It's just like, oh, here you go. Like, it's not like I was like, oh, these guys were popping up. Like, whatever.
It feels a bit like scummy, no, to like release them 2 weeks into the split. Like presumably they're gonna bring up some of their amateur. If they have an amateur team, they're gonna get players from there, or they figured like, well, we're not gonna use these players anyway, so let's just like go find some new guys.
So here's what I'll say about it. This might be something where the Players Association needs to change some things, because I hope that they got paid for their full contract, but I don't think they did. I highly doubt they did, in fact. And so that's where I think it's probably a little bit slimy, is that they probably had a contract and were just let go and they don't get any of the money. But if you have no intention on keeping that player, then I think it's good that they get to, you're free now. Like you get to, like, that's kind of stupid. But seriously though, you're never going to get anywhere with that team if they have no intention on playing you. So stop wasting the players' time, and let them go find their new opportunity. So there's some good and some bad with it from my perspective.
All right.
The you're free now is just
Yeah.
kind of a meme.
Next up, I think this was announced earlier this morning. Cadril, our boy Cadril over in the LEC, is joining DRX
Let's
as
go.
a streamer.
I don't care about DRX, but I love Cadril, and so I'm glad that he's got a team and making some bank, because he is really good at what he does, whether it's just his stream or whether it's the LEC commentary. He's great. I think that he's one of the best personalities that Pro League has, and so I'm really happy for him.
Next up, Hex Flash was previously disabled, or was supposed to be disabled, but it showed up in one LEC game in week 1. Is enabled for week 2 of LEC and presumably for LCS week 2.
Okay, how stupid is it that Hex Flash is supposed to be disabled? Someone took it, and instead of remaking the game and making sure the runes were right, they were just like, "Don't use it, forehead."
Yeah, that's stupid.
That's so weird. Like, oh yeah, I know you have this button, but you're not allowed to use it. Like, just remake the game to make sure that he doesn't. Like, sometimes you're in the middle of the game, like you're not thinking, right? That is just weird to me. But anyways, I hope that teams, specifically FlyQuest, continue to play their Enchanter style, because I think Dreams has looked a little bit better on the Enchanters. Yes, they got dogged on by Cloud9 when he played Soraka, but I still think that I'm happy that Dreams is playing something different than just the engage supports, because I like to see a little bit of variety. And so I hope that he wasn't just playing these Enchanters just because Hex Flash was disabled. But I guess we'll have to see, because it looks like they fixed that. So yeah.
Last up, there are a ton of changes that are going to be happening on patch 11.13. Is seemingly going to be a real meta-defining patch. I'm not going to go through all the specific changes because not all of them are yet finalized. I think when the actual patch notes for 11.13 come out, we'll probably do, I would assume, a whole topic on that, because there are a ton of changes. To just give a quick rundown of all the things that are getting changed. Basically, they're doing an entire system change, is what they call it, to mobility. So they're nerfing a lot of items that involve mobility, including Deadman's Plate, Prowler's Claw, Shirelia's, what else did I miss? Cosmic Drive, Stride Breaker's the biggest one. And then they're just like adjusting some movement speed on like, small movement speed items like Trinity Force, Lichbane. Did I say Nimbus Cloak? They're nerfing that rune. Thank God.
I was just gonna say I wasn't listening at all to what you were saying. I was kind of zoned out, but
yeah,
Nimbus Cloak is one that's been kind of OP for a while. So
yeah, like they're adding 2 new items into the game. One meant to be a split pushing item. One meant to be like a 1v1 sort of item. You can go look it up on like Mark Yetter's Twitter or whatever. They're doing the Tom Kench rework on 11.13. I feel like nobody has any idea.
Like?
So
we don't know.
Well, we know. His Devour, as in his W, is now being moved to his alt.
Okay.
And his W is now a very small version of Abyssal Voyage that goes like very short distances, but if you can knock them up if you hit them with it.
Playmaking.
So like,
okay, good.
But it seems really gimmicky, so people aren't really too sure. One thing that's really interesting with the rework or the change to the ultimate, which is now your Devour, is you know how you can like yoink the jungle camps if you like QW at the same time? You can do that with champions if you have 3 stacks of Acquired Taste on them.
You can like yeet them?
Like you can yoink them. Like so if you Q with the rework, if you QR somebody and they have 3 stacks of Acquired Taste on them, you'll like yoink them from far away and then gobble them up and like you can in the jungle camps, which is cool.
Okay. That's interesting. His W to me sounds like it's going to be kind of Alistair combo.
It's it's really slow though.
Oh.
It's like you got to kind of predict where they're going to move, and then if you hit it, it's really weird. I think we'll do a big like patch rundown when the patch officially is announced and whatnot, because there are a ton of changes to go through. I didn't even go through like some of the champion nerfs. Dr. Mundo is probably going to show up pretty soon, the rework Mundo. There's a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah,
cover it when it
maybe
gets
we'll
to it.
do maybe we'll do a topic on that in future episodes. Cool.
But that is it.
That is it for this episode. Poggers. Okay, guys. Let's do the regular shout outs. Please hit the subscribe button if you are on YouTube. We need those subs, definitely. And for those of you that don't know or are new to the channel, we are available across podcast platforms, being like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything that is Anchor supported. There's like 6 or 7 or 8 of them or whatever.
I think
So
there's 8 in
if
total,
you
but
if you prefer to listen rather than watch, we are available on all of those. I think that's really it. Anything you want to shout out, JNT?
nah,
Oh, we have a Discord too. If you want to join the Discord, we haven't really done any watch parties. Maybe we should look into doing that.
maybe.
Yeah, we haven't done one this split.
Maybe on
we'll look
Sunday
to do
since
that.
there's a lot of good games.
Join the Discord, guys, and if you want to do watch parties, we'll probably look to do one. Maybe I'll tweet out, or maybe I'll just put in the Discord when we want to do a watch party. But yeah, join the Discord if you're interested in watching the games with us, because sometimes we like to watch with some of you guys. Like, why not, right? The more the better. Yeah, if you have nothing to shout out, let's close out the show. We will be back next Monday, as per usual, same time as always, right after Hotline League for you HLL fiends. And thank you guys so much for coming back. This has been episode 46 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.